1. The Ancines Woods, 1970. The Ancines Woods, Spanish, El Bosque del Lobo lit. The Forest of the Wolf, also known as The Wolf's Forest, is a 1970 Spanish drama/horror film co-written, produced and directed by Pedro Olia. It is based on the novel El Bosque de Ancines by Carlos Martinez Barbito and is partially based on the life of Manuel Blanco Romasanta and his alleged lycanthropy. The film focuses on Benito Freire, a lonely and miserable peddler whose world is dominated by ignorance and superstition. Wandering through various Galicia towns, he regularly suffers from severe attacks of epilepsy. Rumors about him begin to spread throughout the region, rumors that claim that Benito is both a werewolf and possessed by a demonic spirit. As the rumors about him continue to spread, Benito slowly descends into madness. El Bosque del Lobo premiered at the Valladolid International Film Festival in April 1970. The film was later screened in the United States at the Chicago International Film Festival on November 1971. It was later released theatrically in Spain on April 22, 1971. It was a critical and commercial success upon its initial release. Won Best Actor in Chicago International Film Festival 1971. Won San Gregorio Prize Valladolid International Film Festival 1970. 2. Romasanta, 2004. Romasanta The Werewolf Hunt in English is a 2004 Spanish-Italian-British horror film directed by Paco Plaza. It is available on DVD from Lionsgate Entertainment under the title Werewolf Hunt. Based on a script by Alfredo Conde. According to the end credits, the film is based on a true story, that of Manuel Blanco Romasanta, Spain's first documented serial killer. Conde is a descendant of one of the doctors involved in the original Werewolf of Alaries court case that took place in 1853-54 in Galicia, Spain. He went on to write a fictional novel, The Uncertain Memoirs of a Galician Wolfman, Romasanta. The same case previously provided the basis for the 1968 Spanish film El Bosque del Lobo, The Wolf's Forest. Romasanta was nominated for a number of Spanish awards, including 2 Goya Awards, Best Cinematography and Best Special Effects, and 2 Barcelona Film Awards, Best Film Editing and Best New Director. Manuel Blanco Romasanta, November 18, 1809 to December 14, 1863 was Spain's first recorded serial killer. In 1853 he admitted to 13 murders, but claimed he was not responsible because he was suffering from a curse that caused him to turn into a wolf. Although this defense was rejected at trial, Queen Isabella II commuted his death sentence to allow doctors to investigate the claim as an example of clinical lycanthropy. Blanco has become part of Spanish folklore as the Werewolf of Alaries and is also known as the Tallow Man, a nickname he earned for rendering his victims fat to make high-quality soap. Other murders, trial and arrest. According to various accounts, he was of small stature, between 1.37 meters 4 feet 6 inches, and 1.49 meters 4 feet 11 inches in height, blonde, and tender-looking. Following the death of his wife in 1833, Blanco became a traveling salesman, initially in Escos, then eventually throughout Galicia and Portugal. In 1844 Blanco was charged with the murder of Vicente Fernandez, the alguacil of Leon. Fernandez was found dead after attempting to collect a debt of 600 real that Blanco owed to a supplier in Ponferrada for the purchase of merchandise. When he failed to appear, he was judged guilty by default and sentenced in absentia to 10 years imprisonment. Fleeing from the threat of imprisonment, Blanco lived in hiding for almost a year in an abandoned shelter in Ermita. He reappeared later in public with a false passport using the name Antonio Gomez, a native of Noguera, Portugal, and lived in the small village of Rebordeco in the district of Vilar de Barrio for at least a year. Although he helped with the harvest, he also worked as a cook, a coir maker, and as a weaver making yarn on a spinning wheel. He became friendly with the women of the village, which led the men to consider him effeminate. Over the following years, several women and children who had hired Blanco as a guide began to disappear. Their disappearances were not noticed immediately as Blanco delivered letters to their families, advising that they had arrived well at their destinations and were settling in. However, people became suspicious when they noticed that he was selling his victims clothing locally. Rumors began to spread that he was selling soap made from human fat. In 1852 a complaint was finally lodged in the city of Escalona, alleging that Blanco deceived women and children into traveling with him so that he could kill them and remove their fat, which he then sold. He was arrested in September 1852 in Nambella in the province of Toledo and brought to trial in Alaries, in the area of Orense. In his defense, Blanco claimed that he was afflicted with lycanthropy. Blanco admitted to 13 murders, but in his defense he said that he had been cursed and had committed them after transforming into a wolf. The first time I transformed was in the mountains of Cuso. I came across 2 ferocious-looking wolves. I suddenly fell to the ground and began to feel convulsions. I rolled over 3 times, and a few seconds later I was a wolf. I was out marauding with the other 2 for 5 days until I returned to my own body, the one you see before you today, Your Honor. The other 2 wolves came with me, who I thought were also wolves, changed into human form. They were from Valencia. One was called Antonio and the other Don Gennaro. They too were cursed. We attacked and ate a number of people because we were hungry. Manuel Blanco Romasanta. The prosecutor Luciano Bastida Hernes asked Blanco to demonstrate the transformation for the court, to which he replied that the curse only lasted for 13 years and that he was now cured as that time had expired the previous week. In October 1852, Alary's doctors presented the court with a report on Blanco. Based heavily on phrenology, the report accused him of inventing his affliction. While noting that lycanthropy can be determined from a visceral examination and cranioscopia, the doctors found no causes or motives for his behavior. On April 6, 1853, Blanco was sentenced to death by garrote with 1,000 real compensation to be paid for each victim. The court case had lasted 7 months and the transcript covered more than 2,000 pages, which were bound in 5 volumes titled Lycanthropia. Death. The Selenova prison and its records no longer exist, but it was widely believed that Blanco died within months of arriving. Locals say it was from illness, but there is also a rumor that he died after being shot by a guard who wanted to see him transform. However, a TVG documentary aired on May 30, 2009 investigated the possibility that he had died elsewhere, suggesting he had died in San Anton Castle in A Coruña. In October 2011, a Jornadas Manuel Blanco Romasanta, a symposium and exhibition of Blanco memorabilia, was held in Alary's, where Galician researchers Felix and Castro Vicente presented evidence that Blanco had died in the prison of Ceuta on December 14, 1863. The evidence consisted of 2 newspaper articles, La Iberia, a liberal journal, of December 23, 1863 that included a short sentence reporting that Blanco had died, and La Esperanza newspaper dated December 21, 1863, which reported on its front page. 3. The Entity, 1982. The Entity is a 1982 American supernatural horror film directed by Sidney J. Fury, and written by Frank de Felitta, who adapted his 1978 novel of the same name. The film stars Barbara Hershey as a single mother in Los Angeles who is raped and tormented by an invisible assailant. Like the novel, the film is based on the 1974 case of Doris Bither, a woman who claimed to have been repeatedly sexually assaulted by an invisible entity, and who was observed by doctoral students at the University of California, Los Angeles. Despite being filmed and planned for a release in 1981, the movie was not released in worldwide theaters until September 1982 and February 1983 in the United States. The film opened in the United Kingdom on September 30, 1982, and was met by protests from women's rights groups who deemed the film offensive due to its graphic depictions of sexual assault. 20th Century Fox released the film in the United States on February 4, 1983, with little pre-publicity. It grossed $3.7 million during its opening weekend, going on to gross a total of $13.3 million. Barbara Hershey won a Avoriaz Fantastic Film Festival Award for Best Actress. The Doris Bither case, also known as the Entity haunting, was a 1974 investigation into alleged paranormal phenomena in Culver City, California, experienced by a woman named Doris Bither. Doris Bither contacted parapsychologist Barry Taff in 1974 to relate alarming phenomena she experienced. At the time, Taff was working in the now-defunct parapsychology lab run by Thelma Moss at the University of California, Los Angeles. With the assistance of Carrie Gaynor, Taff conducted a preliminary interview of Bither's paranormal claims. This interview revealed Bither had a history of physical and substance abuse along with a traumatic childhood. Investigators also found that Bither and her 4 children were living illegally in a condemned home that was in severe disrepair. Bither alleged that she was attacked and raped by one or several invisible entities. More benign manifestations recounted by Bither included luminous, transparent human shapes and poltergeist events. Based on Bither's story, his own observations, and the photographs, Taff concluded paranormal phenomena must have been involved, calling the case a haunting. Reviewing the case 4 decades later, investigator Benjamin Radford concluded the case likely involves a distressed family, poor investigation techniques and confirmation bias. Bither died in 1999. 4. Angst, 1983. Angst, English, Fear, is a 1983 Austrian horror film directed by Gerald Cargill, who co-wrote the screenplay with cinematographer and editors Zbigniew Rybczynski. It follows a psychopath recently released from prison and is loosely based on real-life mass murderer Werner Nisek. Though relatively obscure, the film was acclaimed for its camera work, score, and Erwin Letter's performance. It was banned in many European countries on its release for its depictions of extreme violence. In 2012, Angst was released on Blu-ray in France under the title of Schizophrenia. In 2015, American distributor Cult Epics released the film on Blu-ray, DVD and digitally, as well as giving the film a limited theatrical re-release in the United States. Werner Nisek, born November 17, 1946 in Salzburg, is an Austrian triple murderer, who was one of the most dangerous offenders in Austria's criminal history, torturing and killing a family of 3 while on parole. Born illegitimately and raised in Salzburg, Nisek began skipping school, stealing and running away from home as a youth. He had never met his father and his mother was overwhelmed with him, so she wanted him to find himself a house. When he learned this, Werner stabbed her with a knife, stole some money and fled to Germany, where the 16-year-old was arrested in Hamburg and extradited back to Austria. After 2 years of juvenile detention for attempted murder, Nicek was released. After committing several burglaries, he shot a 73-year-old woman. In 1973, he pleaded insanity and was sentenced to 8.5 years in prison, where he was dismissed in early January 1980 for good behavior. A few weeks before his release, he was given a 3-day prison leave from the Garson prison to seek work. He had been convicted 7 times since the age of 16, had been in prison for 15 years and spent 13 months in a workhouse. With the money that Nicek received in jail through making illegal liquor, he bought a gas pistol in Vienna and on January 16, 1980 went by train to St. Polten, where he posed as a carpet representative. He broke into the villa of the Altrider family in the Fuchsenkellergasse. Nicek tortured and strangled the son with his bare hands, dragging the body from the wheelchair to his mother, torturing her as well, and then strangling her 3 hours later with a noose. The next morning Nicek packed the 3 bodies in the trunk of the family's Mercedes-Benz and undertook a shopping spree with the redeemed check. In Karlstetten, Nicek visited a restaurant, and some people became suspicious when they noticed the large amounts of cash of the taciturn man, who also wore black gloves, which he did not take off for the whole meal. He also inquired about the next motorway ramp. An employee noted down the Mercedes license plate and alerted the gendarmerie, who then drove to the Altreiders' estate and discovered a broken window. Since the 3 residents were also missing, a nationwide search for the car and the family was initiated. Nicek finally confessed to having murdered the Altreider family out of sheer desire to kill. The murders served only his mental satisfaction, and he could not point out any other murders. On July 4, 1980, Werner Nicek was sentenced by the St. Polten District Court to life imprisonment and admitted to an institution for the mentally unstable. In 1983, he made an escape attempt from the Stein prison, but he failed. 5. Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, 1986. Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer is a 1986 American independent crime film directed and co-written by John McNaughton about the random crime spree of a serial killer who seemingly operates with impunity. The characters of Henry and Otis are loosely based on convicted real-life serial killers Henry Lee Lucas and Otis Toole. The film was shot in 1985 but had difficulty finding a film distributor. It premiered at the Chicago International Film Festival in 1986 and played at other festivals throughout the late 1980s. Following successful showings during which it attracted both controversy and positive critical attention, the slasher film was rated X by the MPAA, further increasing its reputation for controversy. It was subsequently picked up for a limited release in 1990 in an unrated version. It was shot on 16mm in less than a month with a budget of $110,000. Henry Lee Lucas, August 23, 1936 to March 12, 2001, also known as the Confession Killer, was an American convicted murderer. Lucas was convicted of murdering his mother in 1960 and 2 others in 1983. He rose to infamy as a claimed serial killer while incarcerated for these crimes when he falsely confessed to approximately 600 other murders to Texas Rangers and other law enforcement officials. Many unsolved cases were closed based on the confessions and the murders officially attributed to Lucas. Lucas was convicted of murdering 11 people and condemned to death for a single case with a then unidentified victim, later identified as Deborah Jackson. An investigation by the Dallas Times-Herald newspaper showed that many of the murders Lucas confessed to were impossible for him to have committed. While the Rangers defended their work, a follow-up investigation by the Attorney General of Texas concluded Lucas was a fabulist who had falsely confessed. Lucas' death sentence was commuted to life in prison in 1998. Lucas later recanted his confessions as a hoax with the exception of his confession to murdering his mother. He died of congestive heart failure in 2001. Otis Elwood Toole, March 5, 1947 to September 15, 1996, was an American serial killer who was convicted of 6 counts of murder. Like his companion Henry Lee Lucas, Toole made confessions which resulted in murder convictions, and which he later recanted. The discrediting of the case against Lucas for crimes for which Toole had offered corroborating statements created doubts as to whether either was a genuine serial killer or, as Hugh Ainsworth suggested, both were merely compliant interviewees whom police used to clear unsolved murders from the books. Toole received 2 death sentences, but on appeal they were commuted to life imprisonment. He died in his cell from cirrhosis, at age 49. Police attributed the 1981 murder of Adam Walsh to Toole on the basis of recanted statements. Lucas had backed Toole's confession to the Walsh murder, claiming that he had been in possession of the victim's severed head, though Lucas had a reputation for false confessions. 6. Bloody Wednesday, 1988. Bloody Wednesday is a 1988 thriller film directed by Mark G. Gillius and starring Raymond Elmendorf, Pamela Baker, and Jeff Ohako. It is based on the events of the San Isidro McDonald's massacre. Bloody Wednesday was shot in 1985 but released on September 8, 1988 on VHS. On April 19, 2016 the film was finally officially released on DVD in the United States by Film Chest. A Blu-ray release has yet to be announced. The San Isidro McDonald's massacre was an act of mass murder which occurred at a McDonald's restaurant in the San Isidro neighborhood of San Diego, California on July 18, 1984. The perpetrator, 41-year-old James Huberty, October 11, 1942 to July 18, 1984, fatally shot 21 people and wounded 19 others before being killed by a police sniper approximately 77 minutes after he had first opened fire. At the time, the massacre was the deadliest mass shooting by a lone gunman in U.S. history, being surpassed 7 years later by the Luby shooting. It remains the deadliest mass shooting in California's history. The entire incident had lasted for 77 minutes, during which time Huberty fired a minimum of 257 rounds of ammunition, killing 20 people and wounding as many others, one of whom was pronounced brain dead upon arrival at hospital and died the following day. 17 of the victims were killed inside the restaurant and 4 in the immediate vicinity. Only 10 individuals inside the restaurant were uninjured, 6 of whom had hidden inside the basement utility room. Several victims had tried to stanch their own wounds and/or the wounds of their companions with napkins, often in vain. Of the fatalities, 13 died from gunshot wounds to the head, 7 from gunshots to the chest, and 1 victim, 8-month-old Carlos Reyes, from a single 9mm gunshot to the back. The victims, whose ages ranged from 4 months to 74 years, were predominantly, though not exclusively, of Mexican or Mexican-American ancestry, reflecting local demographics. Huberty's body was cremated on July 23, 1984. No official religious service was observed throughout this act. His ashes were returned to his widow, and later interred in his home state of Ohio. In the weeks following the massacre, Huberty's wife and daughters received numerous death threats, forcing them to temporarily reside with a family friend. All 3 would attend counseling sessions for over 9 months. Edna Huberty and her daughters initially relocated from San Isidro to Chula Vista, where Zelia and Cassandra enrolled in school under assumed names. 1 year later, the family moved to the community of Spring Valley in San Diego County. Wendy Flanagan Wright and fellow McDonald's employee Alicia Garcia, pictured in the parking lot of the restaurant shortly after Huberty's death. A slightly wounded survivor, pictured on the grounds of the restaurant shortly after the incident. Plaque at the victim's memorial, inscribed with the names of the 21 dead. 7. The Silence of the Lambs, 1991. The Silence of the Lambs is a 1991 American psychological horror thriller film directed by Jonathan Demme and written by Ted Talley, adapted from Thomas Harris's 1988 novel of the same name. A young FBI trainee who is hunting a serial killer named Buffalo Bill, Ted Levine, who skins his female victims. To catch him, she seeks the advice of the imprisoned Dr. Hannibal Lecter, Anthony Hopkins, a brilliant psychiatrist and cannibalistic serial killer. The Silence of the Lambs was released on February 14, 1991, and grossed $272.7 million worldwide on a $19 million budget, becoming the 5th highest grossing film of 1991 worldwide. It premiered at the 41st Berlin International Film Festival, where it competed for the Golden Bear, while Demme received the Silver Bear for Best Director. It was the first, and to date only, horror film to win Best Picture. The American Film Institute ranked it the 65th greatest film in American cinema as well as the 5th greatest and most influential thriller film, while Starling and Lecter were ranked among the greatest film heroines and villains. The film is considered, culturally, historically, or aesthetically, significant by the U.S. Library of Congress and was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry in 2011. The Silence of the Lambs is a 1988 psychological horror crime thriller novel by Thomas Harris. Published August 29, it is the sequel to Harris's 1981 novel Red Dragon, and both novels feature the cannibalistic serial killer and brilliant psychiatrist Dr. Hannibal Lecter. Dr. Hannibal Lecter is a character created by the American novelist Thomas Harris. Lecter is a serial killer who eats his victims. Before his capture, he was a respected forensic psychiatrist. After his incarceration, he is consulted by FBI agents Will Graham and Clarice Starling to help them find other serial killers. Lecter first appeared in a small role as a villain in Harris's 1981 thriller novel Red Dragon, which was adapted into the film Manhunter 1986 with Brian Cox as Lecter, spelled Lecter. Lecter had a larger role in The Silence of the Lambs, 1988. The 1991 film adaptation starred Anthony Hopkins as Lecter, for which he won the Academy Award for Best Actor. Hopkins reprised the role for the 2001 adaptation of the 1999 novel Hannibal, which sees Lecter evading recapture, and for a second adaptation of Red Dragon in 2002. The fourth novel, Hannibal Rising 2006, explores Lecter's childhood and development into a serial killer. He was played in the 2007 film adaptation by Gas Berdella. In the NBC television series Hannibal 2013-2015, which focuses on Lecter's relationship with Graham, Lecter was played by Mads Mikkelsen, who won the Saturn Award for Best Actor on Television for his performance. 8. Scream 1996. Scream is a 1996 American slasher film directed by Wes Craven and written by Kevin Williamson. Set in the fictional town of Woodsboro, California, Scream's plot follows high school student Sydney Prescott, Campbell, and her friends, who, on the anniversary of her mother's murder, become the targets of a costumed serial killer known as Ghostface. Williamson, who was struggling to get his projects off the ground, was inspired by reports of a series of murders by the Gainesville Ripper as he wrote a screenplay that satirized the cliches of the slasher genre popularized in films such as Halloween 1978, Friday the 13th 1980 and A Nightmare on Elm Street 1984. Released on December 20, 1996, Scream was not expected to perform well due to concerns over releasing a slasher film in a time normally reserved for holiday entertainment, but it went on to gross approximately $173 million worldwide through the strength of word of mouth, becoming a surprise success and one of the highest-grossing films of the year. The success of the film launched a multimedia franchise, which comprises the sequels Scream 2 1997, Scream 3 2000, Scream 4 2011, Scream 2022, and Scream 6 2023, as well as an anthology television series. Danny Harold Rowling, May 26, 1954 to October 25, 2006, known as the Gainesville Ripper, was an American serial killer who murdered 5 college students in Gainesville, Florida over 4 days in August 1990. He later confessed to raping several of his victims, committing a triple homicide in his home city of Shreveport, Louisiana, and attempting to murder his father in May 1990. In total, Rowling confessed to killing 8 people. He was sentenced to death for the 5 Gainesville murders in 1994. He was executed by lethal injection in 2006. In 2013 TV documentary series The Real Story aired an episode profiling the movie Scream. It aired July 28, 2013, and tells the story of Rowling's murders in graphic detail. An episode of Murder Made Me Famous, which aired November 24, 2018, chronicled the case. The premiere episode of Mark of a Killer, titled Pose to Kill, documented the case. 9. The Manson Family 1997. The Manson Family is a 1997 American true crime exploitation horror film directed by Jim Van Beber. The film covers the lives of Charles Manson and his family of followers. Despite support from various people, including members of the band Skinny Puppy, who provided a musical score, in the form of downloads Charlie's Family album, the film remained incomplete. A rough-cut version screened at a number of festivals during 1997, including at the Fantasia Film Festival in July of that year. The film was released in a now out-of-print combination Blu-ray and DVD set in 2003 by Severin Films. Charles Millis Manson, Maddox, November 12, 1934 to November 19, 2017, was an American criminal, cult leader and musician who led the Manson family, a cult based in California, in the late 1960s. Some of the members committed a series of at least 9 murders at 4 locations in July and August 1969. In 1971 Manson was convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder for the deaths of 7 people, including the film actress Sharon Tate. The prosecution contended that, while Manson never directly ordered the murders, his ideology constituted an overt act of conspiracy. While gathering his cult following, he was a singer-songwriter on the fringe of the Los Angeles music industry, chiefly through a chance association with Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys, who introduced Manson to record producer Terry Melcher. In 1968 the Beach Boys recorded Manson's song, Cease to Exist, renamed Never Learn Not to Love, as a single B-side, but without a credit to Manson. Afterward, Manson attempted to secure a record contract through Melcher, but was unsuccessful. Manson would often talk about the Beatles, including their eponymous 1968 album. According to Los Angeles County District Attorney Vincent Bugliosi, Manson felt guided by his interpretation of the Beatles' lyrics and adopted the term helter-skelter to describe an impending apocalyptic race war. During his trial Bugliosi argued that Manson had intended to start a race war, although Manson and others disputed this. Contemporary interviews and trial witness testimony insisted that the Tate LaBianca murders were copycat crimes intended to exonerate Manson's friend Bobby Beausoleil. Manson himself denied having ordered any murders. 10. In the Light of the Moon, Ed Gein, 2000. In the Light of the Moon, also known as Ed Gein, is a 2000 crime horror film directed by Chuck Perrello and written by Stephen Johnston. It is based on the crimes of Ed Gein, an American murderer who killed at least 2 women in Plainfield, Wisconsin during the 1950s. Ed Gein premiered in America in a single theater in Los Angeles on May 4, 2001. On its opening weekend, the film grossed $5,708, and by May 11 had grossed $11,821. 11. Ed Gein, The Butcher of Plainfield, 2007. Ed Gein, The Butcher of Plainfield is a 2007 American crime horror film written and directed by Michael Pfeiffer. A direct-to-video release, it is based on the crimes of Ed Gein, an American murderer who killed at least 2 women in Plainfield, Wisconsin during the 1950s. Michael Pfeiffer wrote the film script in 3 days and shot the film in 10 days on sets that were previously used in the 2005 Rob Zombie film The Devil's Rejects. When it came to casting Kane Hodder as Ed Gein, Pfeiffer reportedly stated, "Kane was really excited about the part, because it's the first time he's had the opportunity to really show what he can do without the Jason mask." The film's special effects, such as the dummy that was used for Michael Berryman's character's death scene, were provided by Tom Devlin of 1313 FX. Edward Theodore Gein, August 27, 1906 to July 26, 1984, also known as the Butcher of Plainfield or the Plainfield Ghoul, was an American murderer, suspected serial killer and body snatcher. Gein's crimes, committed around his hometown of Plainfield, Wisconsin, gathered widespread notoriety in 1957 after authorities discovered that he had exhumed corpses from local graveyards and fashioned keepsakes from their bones and skin. He also confessed to killing 2 women, tavern owner Mary Hogan in 1954 and hardware store owner Bernice Wardens in 1957. Gein was initially found unfit to stand trial and confined to a mental health facility. By 1968, he was judged competent to stand trial. He was found guilty of the murder of Wardens, but he was found legally insane and was remanded to a psychiatric institution. Gein died at Mendota Mental Health Institute from respiratory failure resulting from lung cancer on July 26, 1984, aged 77. He is buried next to his family in the Plainfield Cemetery, in a now unmarked grave. Brotherhood of the Wolf, French, Le Pacte de Loups, 2001. It is a 2001 French period action horror film. The story takes place in 18th century France, where the Chevalier de Fronsac and Mani of the Iroquois tribe are sent to investigate the mysterious slaughter of hundreds by an unknown creature in the county of Gavaudan. The plot is loosely based on a real-life series of killings that took place in France in the 18th century and the famous legend of the Beast of Gavaudan. Parts of the film were shot at Chateau de Roquetellet. The film has several extended swashbuckling fight scenes, with martial arts performances by the cast mixed in, making it unusual for a historical drama. At a $29 million budget, it was a commercial success, grossing over $70 million in worldwide theatrical release. The film also became the 6th highest grossing French-language film of all time in the United States, and it also became one of the biggest international successes for French-language films. The film's 4K restored, director's cut version premiered in the official selection of 2022 Cannes Film Festival. The Beast of Gavaudan is the historic name associated with a man-eating animal or animals that terrorized the former province of Gavaudan, consisting of the modern-day department of Lozère and part of Haute-Loire, in the Marche-Ride Mountains of south-central France between 1764 and 1767. The attacks, which covered an area spanning 90 by 80 kilometers, 56 by 50 miles, were said to have been committed by one or more beasts of a tawny/russet color with dark streaks/stripes and a dark stripe down its back, a tail, longer than a wolf's, ending in a tuft according to contemporary eyewitnesses. It was said to attack with formidable teeth and claws, and appeared to be the size of a calf or cow and seemed to fly or bound across fields towards its victims. These descriptions from the period could identify the beast as a young lion, a striped hyena, a large wolf, a large dog, or a wolf dog, though its identity is still the subject of debate. The Kingdom of France used a considerable amount of wealth and manpower to hunt the animals responsible, including the resources of several nobles, soldiers, royal huntsmen, and civilians. The number of victims differs according to the source. A 1987 study estimated there had been 210 attacks resulting in 113 deaths and 49 injuries. 98 of the victims killed were partly eaten. Other sources claim the animal or animals killed between 60 and 100 adults and children and injured more than 30. Victims were often killed by having their throats torn out. The beast was reported killed several times before the attacks finally stopped. 13. From Hell 2001. From Hell is a 2001 period detective horror film directed by the Hughes brothers and written by Terry Hayes and Rafael Iglesias. It is loosely based on the graphic novel of the same name by Alan Moore and Eddie Campbell about the Jack the Ripper murders. The film stars Johnny Depp as Frederick Aberline, the lead investigator of the murders, and Heather Graham as Mary Kelly, a prostitute targeted by the Ripper. From Hell was theatrically released in the United States on October 19, 2001 by 20th Century Fox. The film grossed over $74 million worldwide and received mixed reviews from critics, with many praising the performances, particularly those of Depp and Graham, atmosphere and production values, but was negatively compared to its source material. Jack the Ripper was an unidentified serial killer active in and around the impoverished Whitechapel district of London, England in 1888. In both criminal case files and the contemporaneous journalistic accounts, the killer was also called the Whitechapel Murderer and Leather Apron. About Whitechapel murder. The Whitechapel murders were committed in or near the impoverished Whitechapel district in the East End of London between April 3, 1888 and February 13, 1891. At various points some or all of these 11 unsolved murders of women have been ascribed to the notorious unidentified serial killer known as Jack the Ripper. Most if not all of the 11 victims, Emma Elizabeth Smith, Martha Tabram, Mary and Polly Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, Mary Jane Kelly, Rose Milet, Alice Mackenzie, Frances Coles, and an unidentified woman, were engaged in prostitution. Smith was sexually assaulted and robbed by a gang. Tabram was stabbed 39 times. Nichols, Chapman, Stride, Eddowes, Kelly, Mackenzie and Coles had their throats cut. Eddowes and Stride were murdered on the same night, within approximately an hour and less than a mile apart. Their murders are known as the double event, after a phrase in a postcard sent to the press by an individual claiming to be the Ripper. The bodies of Nichols, Chapman, Eddowes and Kelly had abdominal mutilations. Milet was strangled. The body of the unidentified woman was dismembered, but the exact cause of her death is unclear. Despite extensive inquiries and several arrests, the culprit or culprits evaded capture, and the murders were never solved. The Whitechapel murders drew attention to the poor living conditions in the East End slums, which were subsequently improved. Attacks ascribed to Jack the Ripper typically involved women working as prostitutes who lived and worked in the slums of the East End of London. Their throats were cut prior to abdominal mutilations. The removal of internal organs from at least 3 of the victims led to speculation that their killer had some anatomical or surgical knowledge. Rumors that the murders were connected intensified in September and October 1888, and numerous letters were received by media outlets and Scotland Yard from individuals purporting to be the murderer. September 8, 1888 edition of the Penny Illustrated paper depicting the discovery of the body of the first canonical Ripper victim, Mary Ann Nichols. The name, Jack the Ripper, originated in a Dear Boss letter written by an individual claiming to be the murderer, which was disseminated in the press. The letter is widely believed to have been a hoax and may have been written by journalists to heighten interest in the story and increase their newspaper's circulation. A police investigation into a series of 11 brutal murders committed in Whitechapel and Spitalfields between 1888 and 1891 was unable to connect all the killings conclusively to the murders of 1888. 5 victims, Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly, are known as the Canonical Five, and their murders between August 31 and November 9, 1888 are often considered the most likely to be linked. The murders were never solved, and the legend surrounding these crimes became a combination of historical research, folklore, and pseudo-history, capturing public imagination to the present day. Blind Man's Buff, Punch cartoon by John Tenniel September 22, 1888 criticizing the police's alleged incompetence. The failure of the police to capture the killer reinforced the attitude held by radicals that the police were inept and mismanaged. 14. Dahmer, 2002. Dahmer is a 2002 American horror drama film written and directed by David Jacobson, and co-written by David Burke. A limited theatrical release, it is based on the crimes of Jeffrey Dahmer, a serial killer, who killed 17 young men and boys in Bath, Ohio and Milwaukee, Wisconsin between 1978 and 1991. Dahmer was given a limited theatrical release by Peninsula Films on June 21, 2002. On its opening weekend, it played in 2 theaters, and grossed $16,093. By August 12, 2002 it had expanded to 5 theaters, and grossed $144,008. Internationally, it grossed $4,227. A remastered version of the film was released on Blu-ray by MVD Entertainment Group on August 11, 2020. 15. My Friend Dahmer 2017. My Friend Dahmer is a 2017 American biographical psychological drama film written and directed by Mark Myers about American serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer. The film is based on the 2012 graphic novel of the same name by cartoonist John Durf Bachter, who had been friends with Dahmer in high school in the 1970s until the time Dahmer began his killing spree in 1978. The film stars Ross Lynch as Dahmer, Alex Wolff as Durf, Dallas Roberts as Jeffrey's father, and Anne Heche as Jeffrey's mother. The film premiered at the 2017 Tribeca Film Festival and was released in the United States on November 3, 2017 by Hulu. The film received generally positive reviews with critics praising the historical accuracy and Lynch's performance. My Friend Dahmer was a failure at the box office, grossing $1.4 million on a budget of around $1.5 million. Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer, May 21, 1960 to November 28, 1994, also known as the Milwaukee Cannibal or the Milwaukee Monster, was an American serial killer and sex offender who killed and dismembered 17 males between 1978 and 1991. Many of his later murders involved necrophilia, cannibalism, and the permanent preservation of body parts, typically all or part of the skeleton. Although he was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder (BPD), schizotypal personality disorder (STPD), and a psychotic disorder, Dahmer was found to be legally sane at his trial. He was convicted of 15 of the 16 homicides he had committed in Wisconsin and was sentenced to 15 terms of life imprisonment on February 17, 1992. Dahmer was later sentenced to a 16th term of life imprisonment for an additional homicide committed in Ohio in 1978. Dahmer, pictured in West Germany in 1979, his off-duty drinking caused him to be deemed unsuitable for military service in 1981. The Columbia Correctional Institution. Dahmer was imprisoned at this facility until his death in 1994. On November 28, 1994, Dahmer was beaten to death by Christopher Scarver, a fellow inmate at the Columbia Correctional Institution in Portage, Wisconsin. An illustration provided by Dahmer depicting the private altar he had been planning to create at the time of his July 1991 arrest. Private contractors from the fire department's hazardous materials unit removed the 57-gallon drum from Dahmer's apartment July 23, 1991. The Secret Life. Jeffrey Dahmer was released in 1993. Directed by David Bowen, this biographical crime drama stars Carl Crew as Dahmer. The drama film Raising Jeffrey Dahmer was released in 2006. Revolving around the reactions of Dahmer's parents following his arrest in 1991, Raising Jeffrey Dahmer stars Rusty Sneary as Dahmer and co-stars Scott Cordes as Lionel Dahmer. Monster, The Jeffrey Dahmer Story. A 10-part biographical crime drama series that was commissioned by Netflix and released on September 21, 2022. Evan Peters portrayed Dahmer. Conversations with a Killer, The Jeffrey Dahmer Tapes. Commissioned by Netflix and directed by Joe Berlinger, this series includes previously unreleased recordings of conversations between Dahmer and his attorneys. The first of this 3-part series was broadcast on October 7, 2022. 16. The Mothman Prophecies 2002. The Mothman Prophecies is a 2002 American supernatural horror mystery film directed by Mark Pellington. Based on the 1975 book of the same name by parapsychologist and Fortean author John Keel. The film claims to be based on actual events that occurred between November 1966 and December 1967 in Point Pleasant as described by Keel. It was shot in Pittsburgh and Kittanning, Pennsylvania and was released to mixed reviews, although it was a box office success and has since gained a cult following. The Mothman Prophecies opened at the U.S. box office on January 25, 2002, earning $11,208,851 in its first weekend, failing to enter the top 5 grossing films. It eventually went on to garner $35,746,370 in the U.S. and $19,411,169 in foreign markets for a worldwide total of $55,157,539. The Mothman Prophecies is a 1975 book by John Keel. The book relates Keel's accounts of his investigation into alleged sightings of a large, winged creature known as Mothman in the vicinity of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, during 1966 and 1967. It combines these accounts with his theories about UFOs and various supernatural phenomena, ultimately connecting them to the collapse of the Silver Bridge across the Ohio River on December 15, 1967. Official investigations in 1971 determined the bridge collapse was caused by stress corrosion cracking in an eye-bar in a suspension chain. About Mothman. Mothman in West Virginian folklore is a humanoid creature reportedly seen in the Point Pleasant area from November 15, 1966 to December 15, 1967. The first newspaper report was published in the Point Pleasant Register, dated November 16, 1966, titled, "Couples See Man-Sized Bird Creature Something." The national press soon picked up the reports and helped spread the story across the United States. The source of the legend is believed to have originated from sightings of out-of-migration sandhill cranes or herons. The creature was introduced to a wider audience by Gray Barker in 1970 and was later popularized by John Keel in his 1975 book The Mothman Prophecies, claiming that there were paranormal events related to the sightings, and a connection to the collapse of the Silver Bridge. The book was later adapted into a 2002 film starring Richard Gere. An annual festival in Point Pleasant is devoted to the Mothman legend. 17. Gacy: The Crawl Space 2003. Gacy, also known as The Crawl Space, is a 2003 American crime horror thriller film written and directed by Clive Saunders. A direct-to-video release, it is based on the crimes of John Wayne Gacy, an American serial killer who raped, tortured and murdered at least 33 men and boys in Chicago, Illinois during the 1970s. The film stars actor Mark Holton in his first lead role as Gacy. John Wayne Gacy, March 17, 1942 to May 10, 1994, was an American serial killer and sex offender who raped, tortured and murdered at least 33 young men and boys in Norwood Park Township, near Chicago, Illinois. He became known as the Killer Clown due to his public performances as a clown prior to the discovery of his crimes. Gacy, second left, pictured with his first wife left at the 1967 Waterloo Jaycees Christmas party. Gacy committed all of his known murders inside his ranch-style house. Typically, he would lure a victim to his home and dupe them into donning handcuffs on the pretext of demonstrating a magic trick. He would then rape and torture his captive before killing his victim by either asphyxiation or strangulation with a garrote. 26 victims were buried in the crawl space of his home, and 3 were buried elsewhere on his property, 4 were discarded in the Des Plaines River. Gacy with First Lady Rosalind Carter on May 6, 1978, 6 years after his first murder and 7 months before his final arrest. Gacy had previously been convicted in 1968 of the sodomy of a teenage boy in Waterloo, Iowa, and was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment, but served 18 months. He murdered his first victim in 1972, had murdered twice more by the end of 1975, and murdered at least 30 victims after his divorce from his second wife in 1976. The investigation into the disappearance of Des Plaines teenager Robert Piest led to Gacy's arrest on December 21, 1978. His conviction for 33 murders, by one individual, then covered the most homicides in United States legal history. Gacy was sentenced to death on March 13, 1980. He was executed by lethal injection at Stateville Correctional Center on May 10, 1994. Facial reconstructions of the unidentified victims, released to the media in 1980. Depicted left to right are Body 5, later identified as Francis Alexander, Body 9 later identified as Timothy McCoy, Body 24 later identified as James Hawkinson, Body 19 later identified as William Bundy. 18. Evilenko 2004. Evilenko is a 2004 English-language Italian crime horror thriller film very loosely based on the Soviet serial killer Andrei Chikatilo. Written and directed by David Grieco, the film stars Malcolm McDowell, Martin Chokas, and Ronald Pickup. The story is a fictionalization of the life and crimes of serial killer Andrei Chikatilo. Large segments of the film were adapted from Grieco's novel entitled The Communist Who Ate Children. The character is renamed Andrei Evilenko in reference to Chikatilo. Andrei Romanovich Chikatilo, October 16, 1936 to February 14, 1994, was a Ukrainian-born Soviet serial killer nicknamed the Butcher of Rostov, the Rostov Ripper, and the Red Ripper, who sexually assaulted, murdered and mutilated at least 52 women and children between 1978 and 1990 in the Russian SFSR, the Ukrainian SSR and the Uzbek SSR. Chikatilo confessed to 56 murders. He was tried for 53 murders in April 1992. He was convicted and sentenced to death for 52 of these murders in October 1992, although the Supreme Court of Russia ruled in 1993 that insufficient evidence existed to prove his guilt in 9 of those killings. Chikatilo was executed by gunshot in February 1994. Chikatilo was known as the Rostov Ripper and the Butcher of Rostov because he committed most of his murders in the Rostov Oblast of the Russian SFSR. Memorial to Chikatilo's 7th victim, Irina Karabelnikova. This memorial was erected by Karabelnikova's father at the site of her murder. He was by all accounts a devoted father. In 1963, Andrei Chikatilo entered into an arranged marriage with Feodosia Odnikeva. He was introduced to her by his sister, and the pair married a mere 2 weeks after they first met in person. Their union was plagued with issues, including his sexual dysfunction. Despite this, they managed to have 2 children, a daughter named Ludmila, and a son named Yuri. His family life was perfectly normal by outside appearances, and he was reportedly a good, devoted father to his children. This seems all the more twisted considering that he killed children as young as 9 and 10. The film Citizen X 1995 is directly based upon the murders committed by Chikatilo. Inspired by Robert Cullen's non-fiction book The Killer Department, Citizen X largely portrays the investigation of the Rostov Ripper murders through the experiences of Detective Viktor Burakov in his efforts to ensnare the killer. The film Child 44 2015 is based upon the fiction novel Child 44 by Tom Rob Smith, which was itself inspired by the Chikatilo case but with the era changed to the 1950s. Chikatilo, fictionalized as Vladimir Malevich, is portrayed by British actor Paddy Considine. 19. The Exorcism of Emily Rose 2005. It is an American supernatural horror legal drama film directed by Scott Derrickson. The film is loosely based on the book The Exorcism of Anneliese Michel by Felicitas D. Goodman, which tells the story of Anneliese Michel, and follows a self-proclaimed agnostic, Linny, who acts as defense counsel representing a parish priest, Wilkinson, accused of negligent homicide after performing an exorcism. The Exorcism of Emily Rose made $75.1 million domestically, and $144.2 million worldwide against a $19 million budget. According to Derrickson, the film was not as successful as he hoped. In 2006, the Chicago Film Critics Association listed the film in their top 100 scariest films ever made at 86. Jennifer Carpenter, whose demonic, bodily contortions were often achieved without the aid of visual effects, won Best Frightened Performance at the MTV Movie Awards in 2006. It received the award for Best Horror Film at the 32nd Saturn Awards. Anna Elizabeth Anneliese Michel, September 21, 1952 to July 1, 1976, was a German woman who underwent 67 Catholic exorcism rites during the year before her death. She died of malnutrition, for which her parents and priest were convicted of negligent homicide. She was diagnosed with epileptic psychosis, temporal lobe epilepsy, and had a history of psychiatric treatment that proved ineffective. When Michelle was 16, she experienced a seizure and was diagnosed with psychosis caused by temporal lobe epilepsy. Shortly thereafter, she was diagnosed with depression and was treated by a psychiatric hospital. By the time that she was 20, she had become intolerant of various religious objects and began to hear voices. Her condition worsened despite medication, and she became suicidal, also displaying other symptoms, for which she took medication as well. After taking psychiatric medications for 5 years failed to improve her symptoms, Michelle and her family became convinced she was possessed by a demon. As a result, her family appealed to the Catholic Church for an exorcism. While rejected at first, 2 priests got permission from the local bishop in 1975. The priests began performing exorcisms and the family stopped consulting doctors. Michelle stopped eating food and died of malnourishment and dehydration after 67 exorcism sessions. Michelle's parents and the 2 Roman Catholic priests were found guilty of negligent homicide and were sentenced to 6 months in jail, reduced to 3 years of probation, as well as a fine. In a conference several years later, German bishops retracted the claim that she was possessed. On July 1, 1976, Michelle died in her home. The autopsy report stated the cause of death as malnutrition and dehydration resulting from almost a year in a state of near starvation while the rites of exorcism were performed. She weighed 30 kilograms, 66 pounds, suffered broken knees from continuous genuflections, was unable to move without assistance and was reported to have contracted pneumonia. Several films are based on her story, including the 2005 film The Exorcism of Emily Rose, the award-winning 2006 film Requiem and the 2011 film Annalise, The Exorcist Tapes. 20. Wolf Creek 2005. Wolf Creek is a 2005 Australian horror film written, co-produced and directed by Greg McLean. Its plot concerns 3 backpackers who find themselves taken captive and subsequently hunted by Mick Taylor, a sadistic, psychopathic, xenophobic serial killer, in the Australian outback. The film was ambiguously marketed as being based on true events, while its plot bore elements reminiscent of the real-life murders of backpackers by Ivan Milat in the 1990s and Bradley Murdoch in 2001, both of which McLean used as inspiration for the screenplay. Produced on a $1.1 million budget, filming of Wolf Creek took place in South Australia. The film was shot almost exclusively on high-definition video. It had its world premiere at the Sundance Film Festival in January 2005. It was given a theatrical release in Ireland and the United Kingdom in September 2005, followed by a general Australian release in November, apart from the Northern Territory, out of respect for the pending trial surrounding the murder of Peter Falconio. In the United States and Canada, it was released on Christmas Day 2005, distributed by Dimension Films. The film earned $1.2 million Australian dollars during its opening weekend, entering the Australian box office at number 1. In the United Kingdom, on 292 screens and grossed £1,722,870. In the United States, on 1,749 screens, and grossed a total $16,188,180 at the US box office over the following 3 months. The film was nominated for 7 Australian Film Institute Awards, including Best Director, for McLean. In 2010 it was included in Slant Magazine's list of the 100 best films of the decade. 21. Wolf Creek 2 2013. It is a 2013 Australian horror film co-written and directed by Greg McLean. The film is a sequel to the 2005 film Wolf Creek and stars John Jarratt, reprising his role as Mick Taylor. It was released on August 30, 2013 at the Venice Film Festival, then released in Australia on February 20, 2014. The film follows a young German couple and a British tourist who fall victim to the kidnapping and torture of Mick Taylor, a deranged xenophobic killer, while traveling in the Australian outback. Similar to the 2005 film, the plot is based upon the real-life murders of backpackers by Ivan Milat in the 1990s and Bradley John Murdoch in 2001. The film received mixed reviews from critics, praising the acting from Jarratt and Sorar, but criticism for the violence and gore. The film grossed over $1,510,578 at the box office, making it the #1 film in its opening weekend. The movie's total collection in Australia stood at $4,732,168. A third film, Wolf Creek 3, is currently in development. The Backpacker Murders were a spate of serial killings that took place in New South Wales, Australia, between 1989 and 1993, committed by Ivan Milat. The bodies of 7 missing young people aged 19 to 22 were discovered partially buried in the Evilenko State Forest 15 kilometers, 9.3 miles, southwest of the New South Wales town of Berdella. 5 of the victims were foreign backpackers, 3 German, 2 British, and 2 were Australians from Melbourne. Milat was convicted of the murders on July 27, 1996 and was sentenced to 7 consecutive life sentences, as well as 18 years without parole. He died in prison on October 27, 2019, having never confessed to the murders for which he was convicted. Ivan Robert Marco Milat, December 27, 1944 to October 27, 2019, commonly referred to in media as the Backpacker Murderer, was an Australian serial killer who abducted, assaulted, robbed and murdered 2 men and 5 women in New South Wales between 1989 and 1992. His modus operandi was to approach backpackers along the Hume Highway under the guise of providing them transport to areas of southern New South Wales, then take his victims into the Evilenko State Forest where he would incapacitate and murder them. Milat is also suspected of having committed many other similar offences around Australia. Bradley John Murdoch, born February 19, 1958, is an Australian criminal serving life imprisonment for the July 2001 murder of English backpacker Peter Falconio in Australia. He will be 74 when eligible for parole in 2032. Murdoch is being held in Darwin Correctional Centre in Darwin, Northern Territory. He has lodged 2 appeals against his conviction, both of which were unsuccessful. The High Court of Australia refused special leave to appeal on June 21, 2007. He is forbidden to talk to the press. 22. Cannibal 2006. Cannibal is a 2006 German direct-to-video exploitation horror film written, directed, and produced by Marian Dora in his feature film debut. The film centers on a mentally disturbed individual simply known as the Man, who has cannibalistic fantasies. He makes a deal with a suicidal man known as the Flesh, who agrees to let the man eat him. Cannibal is based on the true story of Armin Meiwes, who killed and ate a man whom he met on the internet. Cannibal was banned after its release in Germany on Muse request. Armin Meiwes, German, Mavs, born December 1, 1961, is a German former computer repair technician who received international attention for murdering and eating a voluntary victim in 2001 whom he had found via the internet. After Meiwes and the victim jointly attempted to eat the victim's severed penis, Meiwes murdered his victim and proceeded to eat a large amount of his flesh. He was arrested in December 2002. In January 2004, Meiwes was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 8 years and 6 months in prison. In a retrial in May 2006, he was convicted of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. Because of his acts, Meiwes is also known as the Rotenburg Cannibal or Der Metzgermeister, the Master Butcher. The house where this event took place was destroyed in a fire that occurred in the early morning on April 17, 2023. Murder of Bernd Brandes and cannibalism. Looking for a willing volunteer, Meiwes posted an online advertisement stating that he was looking for a well-built 18 to 25-year-old to be slaughtered and then consumed. Bernd Jürgen Armando Brandes, a 43-year-old engineer from Berlin, answered the advertisement in March 2001. The two made a videotape when they met on March 9, 2001 in Muse's home, in the small town of Westfeld west of Rotenburg and Der Fulda. The video shows Meiwes amputating Brandes' penis, with his agreement, and the 2 men attempting to eat it together. Before doing so, Brandes swallowed 20 sleeping pills, and a bottle of cough syrup, likely causing an effect of slowed breathing and extreme tiredness. Brandes initially insisted that Meiwes should attempt to bite his penis off. This did not work, and ultimately, Meiwes used a knife to remove it. Brandes apparently tried to eat some of his own penis raw but could not, because it was too tough and, as he put it, chewy. Meiwes then fried the penis in a pan with salt, pepper, wine, and garlic. He then fried it with some of Brandes' fat, but by then it was too burnt to be consumed. He then chopped the penis up into chunks and fed it to his dog. After long hesitation and prayer, Meiwes killed Brandes by stabbing him in the throat, after which he hung the body on a meat hook. The incident was recorded on a 4-hour videotape, which has never been released to the public due to its gruesome contents. For screenshots allegedly from the videotape can be found online, but their credibility is unproven. Meiwes dismembered and ate the corpse over the next 10 months, storing body parts in his freezer under pizza boxes and consuming up to 20 kilograms, 44 pounds, of the flesh. According to prosecutors, Meiwes committed the act for sexual pleasure. Grimm loved German title, Rotenburg, 2006, a feature film directed by Martin Wise and starring Kerry Russell, was banned in Germany after Mae West complained that his personality rights had been violated. The ban was subsequently lifted by Germany's highest civil court after an appeal. The film won multiple awards at the 2006 Festival de Cine de Sitges, including Best Director, Best Actor for the two male leads, and Best Cinematography. 23, An American Crime 2007. American crime drama film directed by Tommy O'Haver and starring Elliot Page and Catherine Keener. The film is based on the true story of the torture and murder of Sylvia Likens by Indianapolis single mother Gertrude Banaszewski. It premiered at the 2007 Sundance Film Festival. Because of internal problems with the film's original distributor, First Look International, the film was not released theatrically. The Showtime television network officially premiered An American Crime on May 10, 2008. The film was nominated for a Golden Globe, a Primetime Emmy, both for Keener's performance, and a Writers Guild of America award. Sylvia Marie Likens, January 3, 1949 to October 26, 1965, was an American teenager who was tortured and murdered by her caregiver Gertrude Banaszewski, many of Banaszewski's children, and several of their neighborhood friends. The abuse lasted for 3 months, occurring incrementally, before Likens died from her extensive injuries and malnourishment on October 26, 1965, in Indianapolis, Indiana. Likens was increasingly tormented, neglected, belittled, sexually humiliated, beaten, starved, lacerated, burned, and dehydrated by her tormentors. Her autopsy showed 150 wounds across her body, including several burns, scald marks, and eroded skin. Through intimidation, her younger sister, Jenny, was occasionally forced to participate in her mistreatment. The official cause of her death was determined to be a homicide caused by a combination of subdural hematoma and shock, complicated by severe malnutrition. Gertrude Banaszewski, her oldest daughter, Paula, her son, John, and two neighborhood youths, Coy Hubbard and Richard Hobbs, were all tried and convicted in May 1966 of neglecting, torturing, and murdering Likens. At the defendant's trial, Deputy Prosecutor Leroy Newt described the case as the most diabolical case to ever come before a court or jury, and Gertrude's defense attorney, William C. Urbecker, described Likens as having been subjected to acts of degradation that you wouldn't commit on a dog before her death. After 8 hours of deliberation, the jury found Gertrude Banaszewski guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life imprisonment but was released on parole in 1985. Paula was found guilty of second-degree murder and was released in 1972. Hobbs, Hubbard, and John were found guilty of manslaughter and served less than 2 years in the Indiana Reformatory before being granted parole on February 27, 1968. The torture and murder of Sylvia Likens is widely regarded by Indiana citizens as the worst crime ever committed in their state and has been described by a senior investigator in the Indianapolis Police Department as the most sadistic case he had ever investigated in the 35 years he served with the Indianapolis Police. Sylvia, left, and Jenny, right, pictured with 3 friends in Long Beach, California on Easter Sunday, 1965. The granite memorial dedicated to the memory of Sylvia Likens and her legacy, formally unveiled in June 2001. Gertrude Banaszewski photographed in 1986, 1 year after her release from the Indiana Women's Prison. 24 Zodiac 2007. It is a 2007 American mystery thriller film directed by David Fincher. Based on the non-fiction books by Robert Graysmith, Zodiac 1986 and Zodiac Unmasked 2002. The film tells the story of the manhunt for the Zodiac Killer, a serial killer who terrorized the San Francisco Bay Area during the late 1960s and early 1970s, taunting police with letters, blood-stained clothing, and ciphers mailed to newspapers. The case remains one of the United States' most infamous unsolved crimes. Zodiac was released by Paramount Pictures in North America and by Warner Bros. Pictures in international markets on March 2, 2007. It received largely positive reviews, with praise for its writing, directing, acting, and historical accuracy. The film was nominated for several awards, including the Saturn Award for Best Action, Adventure, or Thriller Film. It grossed over $84.7 million worldwide on a production budget of $65 million. In a 2016 critics poll conducted by the BBC, Zodiac was voted the 12th greatest film of the 21st century. The Zodiac Killer is the pseudonym of an unidentified serial killer who operated in Northern California in the late 1960s. The Zodiac murdered 5 known victims in the San Francisco Bay Area between December 1968 and October 1969, operating in rural, urban, and suburban settings. He targeted 3 young couples and a lone male cab driver. The case has been described as arguably the most famous unsolved murder case in American history, and has become both a fixture of popular culture and a focus for efforts by amateur detectives. Composite sketch made in 1969 based on eyewitness accounts of the Presidio Heights murder. A 1966 photo of Farron and a man who resembles the Zodiac composite sketch. The Zodiac's known attacks took place in Benicia, Vallejo, unincorporated Napa County, and the city of San Francisco proper. Of his 7 wounded victims, 2 survived. He coined his name in a series of taunting messages that he mailed to regional newspapers, in which he threatened killing sprees and bombings if they were not printed. Some of the letters included cryptograms, or ciphers, in which the killer claimed that he was collecting his victims as slaves for the afterlife. Of the 4 ciphers he produced, 2 remain unsolved, while the others were cracked in 1969 and 2020. The Zodiac's letter received by the San Francisco Chronicle on August 1, 1969, the decryption of the letter's 408-symbol cipher by Donald and Betty Harden. The last confirmed Zodiac letter was in 1974 when he claimed to have killed 37 victims. He claimed many of them were in Southern California, including Sherry Jo Bates, who was murdered in Riverside in 1966. A connection between the two has not been proven. While many theories regarding the identity of the Zodiac have been suggested, the only suspect authorities ever publicly named was Arthur Lee Allen, a former elementary school teacher and convicted sex offender who died in 1992. Photo of Brian Hartnell's car door, onto which the Zodiac wrote details of his attack upon Hartnell and Shepard. An October 1969 wanted poster made by the SFPD, featuring the 2 sketches from the Stein murder. The typewritten confession received by the Riverside Police Department and the Press Enterprise on November 29, 1966. The unusual nature of the case led to international interest that has been sustained throughout the years. The San Francisco Police Department marked the case inactive in 2004, but reopened it at some point prior to 2007. The case also remains open in the California Department of Justice, Federal Bureau of Investigation, the city of Vallejo, as well as in Napa and Solano counties. The granite memorial dedicated to the memory of Sylvia Likens and her legacy, formally unveiled in June 2001. The Halloween card addressed to Paul Avery on October 27, 1970. An advertisement for the Zodiac watch, Allen's watch, which had the same logo as the Zodiac Killer. 25 Baby Blues 2008. Baby Blues, also known as Cradle Will Fall, is a 2008 American horror film co-directed by Lars Jacobson and Amar Kalika, based on the 2001 killings of 5 children by their mother Andrea Yates, although the film is set in the 1980s. It was filmed entirely in Savannah, Georgia by the company Neverending Light Productions. The film was released on August 5, 2008 in the United States and was subject to mediocre reviews, often criticizing the mother's dialogue but praising the acting. On August 9, 2008 Baby Blues was released straight to DVD under the name Cradle Will Fall in the UK. Andrea Pia Yates Nay Kennedy, born July 3, 1964, is an American woman from Houston, Texas who confessed to drowning her 5 children in their bathtub on June 20, 2001. The case of Yates, who had exhibited severe postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis, and schizophrenia leading up to the murders, placed the Manhattan rules, along with the irresistible impulse test for sanity, under close public scrutiny in the United States. At Yates' 2002 trial, Chuck Rosenthal, the district attorney in Harris County, asked for the death penalty. Yates was convicted of capital murder, but the jury refused the death penalty option. She was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 40 years. The verdict was overturned on appeal, in light of false testimony by one of the supposed expert psychiatric witnesses. On July 26, 2006, a Texas jury in her retrial found that Yates was not guilty by reason of insanity. She was consequently committed by the court to the high-security North Texas State Hospital in Vernon, where she received medical treatment and was a roommate of Dina Schlosser, another woman who committed infanticide by killing her infant daughter. In January 2007, Yates was moved to Kerrville State Hospital, a low-security state mental hospital in Kerrville, Texas. 26 Kemper, the CoEdKiller 2008. It is a 2008 American direct-to-video horror film directed by Rick Bitzelberger, and written by Jack Perez. The film is loosely based on the murders committed by California serial killer Edmund Kemper. A negative review was given by Concise Cinema, which criticized every aspect of the film, and gave the closing statement, "It isn't the worst serial killer film I've seen, but it is probably the dullest." Bum's Corner opened its review with, "You'd expect a film called Kemper to be really dark and grim, and possibly hard to watch, but this loosely fact-based tale plays more like an episode of some really low-budget made-for-cable cop show." Edmund Emil Kemper III, born December 18, 1948, is an American serial killer convicted of murdering 7 women and 1 girl, between May 1972 to April 1973. Years earlier, at the age of 15, Kemper had murdered his paternal grandparents. Kemper was nicknamed the Co-Ed Killer, as most of his non-familial victims were female college students hitchhiking in the vicinity of Santa Cruz County, California. Most of his murders included necrophilia, decapitation, and dismemberment. Found sane and guilty at his trial in 1973, Kemper requested the death penalty for his crimes. Capital punishment was suspended in California at the time, and he instead received 8 concurrent life sentences. Since then, he has been incarcerated in the California Medical Facility in Vacaville. While in prison, Kemper has participated in a number of interviews, including a segment in the 1982 documentary The Killing of America as well as an appearance in the 1984 documentary Murder, No Apparent Motive. His interviews have contributed to the understanding of the mind of serial killers. FBI profiler John Douglas described Kemper as among the brightest prison inmates he interviewed and capable of rare insight for a violent criminal. He further added that he personally liked Kemper, referring to him as friendly, open, sensitive, and having a good sense of humor. 27. The Strangers 2008. It is a 2008 American psychological horror film written and directed by Brian Bertino. The film follows a couple, portrayed by Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman, whose stay at a vacation home is disrupted by three masked intruders, portrayed by Kip Weeks, Gemma Ward, and Laura Margolis, who infiltrate the home one night. It is the first installment in the Strangers film series. The screenplay was inspired by two real-life events, the multiple homicide Manson family Tate murders and a series of break-ins that occurred in Bertino's neighborhood as a child. Some journalists noted similarities between the film and the Ketty cabin murders that occurred in Ketty, California in 1981, though Bertino did not cite this as a reference. Made on a budget of $9 million, the film was shot on location in rural South Carolina in the fall of 2006. Originally slated for a theatrical release in November 2007, it was postponed before a theatrical release on May 30, 2008. The film became a sleeper hit, grossing $82 million at the box office worldwide. It received mixed reviews from critics, with some praising its atmosphere and tension, and others criticizing its script and characters. The Manson family, known among its members as the Family, was a commune, gang, and cult led by criminal Charles Manson that was active in California in the late 1960s and early 1970s. The group at its peak consisted of approximately 100 followers, who lived an unconventional lifestyle, frequently using psychoactive drugs, including amphetamine and hallucinogens such as LSD. Most were young women from middle-class backgrounds, many of whom were attracted by hippie culture and communal living and then radicalized by Manson's teachings. The group murdered at least 9 people, though they may have killed as many as 24. The Tate LaBianca murders were a series of murders perpetrated by members of the Manson family during August 9 to 10, 1969 in Los Angeles, California, United States under the direction of Tex Watson and Charles Manson. The perpetrators killed 5 people on the night of August 8 to 9. Pregnant actress Sharon Tate and her companions Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, and Wojciech Frykowski, along with Stephen Parent. The following evening, the family also murdered supermarket executive Leno LaBianca and his wife, Rosemary, at their home in the Los Feliz section of Los Angeles. On the night of August 8 to 9, 4 members of the Manson family, Watson, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Linda Kasabian, drove from Spawn Ranch to 10050 Cielo Drive in Benedict Canyon, the home of Sharon Tate and her husband, film director Roman Polanski. The group murdered Tate, who was 8.5 months pregnant, and guests Jay Sebring, a celebrity hairdresser, Abigail Folger, heiress to Folger's Coffee, her boyfriend Wojciech Frykowski, an aspiring screenwriter, and Stephen Parent, an 18-year-old visiting the guest house caretaker. Roman Polanski was not home as he was working on a film in Europe. Manson was a cult leader and aspiring musician who had tried to get a contract with record producer Terry Melcher, who had previously rented the house. The following night, those 4 people, in addition to Manson, Leslie Van Houten and Steve Clem Grogan, committed 2 more murders. Manson had allegedly said he would show them how to do it. Linda Kasabian drove the group to 3301 Waverly Drive. Manson left with Atkins, Grogan, and Kasabian in the car and told the others to hitchhike back to the ranch. Watson, Krenwinkel, and Van Houten killed the couple in the early morning hours of August 10. The Ketty murders are an unsolved quadruple homicide that occurred over the night of April 11 to 12, 1981 in Ketty, California, United States. The victims were Glenna Susan Sue Sharp Nay Davis, born March 29, 1945, daughter Tina Louise Sharp, born July 22, 1968, son John Stephen Sharp, born November 16, 1965, and John's friend Dana Hall Wingate, born February 8, 1964. The murders took place in house number 28 of the Ketty Resort. The bodies of Wingate, Sue, and John Sharp were found on the morning of April 12 by Sue's 14-year-old daughter Sheila, who had been sleeping at a friend's house. Sue's 2 younger sons, Rick and Greg, as well as their friend Justin Smart, were also in the house but were unharmed. Tina was missing from the scene. Tina remained a missing person until April 1984, when her skull and several other bones were recovered at Camp 18, California, near Feather Falls in Butte County, about 62 miles from Ketty. Multiple leads and suspects were examined in the intervening years, but no charges were filed. Several new leads were announced in the 21st century, including the discovery of a hammer in a pond in 2016 and the discovery of new DNA evidence. 28, Berdella 2009. Itis, a 2009 American horror film written and directed by William Taft, and co-directed by Paul South. A limited theatrical release, it is based on the crimes of Robert Berdella, an American serial killer who raped, tortured, and murdered at least 6 men in Kansas City, Missouri during the 1980s. It stars Seth Correa as Berdella, and co-stars Mark Sulamy, Vito Spino, and Steve Williams. Robert Andrew Berdella Jr. January 31, 1949 to October 8, 1992 was an American serial killer who kidnapped, raped, tortured, and murdered at least 6 young men after forcing his victims to endure periods of up to 6 weeks of captivity. His crimes took place in Kansas City, Missouri between 1984 and 1987. Describing his murders as being some of my darkest fantasies becoming my reality, Berdella pleaded guilty and was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for the first-degree murder of one of his victims, Larry Pearson, in August 1988. He would later plead guilty to 1 further charge of first-degree murder and 4 charges of second-degree murder in December 1988. He died of a heart attack while incarcerated at the Missouri State Penitentiary in October 1992. Berdella became known as the Kansas City Butcher due to his practice of extensively dissecting his victims' bodies, which he would then dispose of in garbage bags, and the Collector due to the movie which he stated was the basis of the fantasies behind the modus operandi of his crimes. On October 8, 1992, Berdella complained to prison staff of severe heart pains, and was taken from his cell to the prison infirmary. Medical staff determined his heart was unstable and called an ambulance. Berdella was taken to a hospital in Columbia, Missouri, where he was pronounced dead from a heart attack at 3:55 p.m. He was 43 years old. According to published reports, although Berdella had a depressive personality disorder, he was also a diagnosed sexual sadist who gained extreme sexual excitation from the humiliation, pain, and torture to which he had subjected his victims. Moreover, despite his claims to journalists whom he had contacted in the years of his incarceration, Berdella never expressed any degree of remorse for his actions and tersely referred to his victims as play toys in an interview he granted shortly before his death. 29. The Haunting in Connecticut 2009. It is a 2009 supernatural horror film directed by Peter Cornwell. The film is alleged to be about Carmen Snedeker and her family, though Ray Garton, author of In a Dark Place, The Story of a True Haunting 1992, has publicly distanced himself from the accuracy of the events he depicted in the book. The film's story follows the fictional Campbells as they move into a house, a former mortuary, to mitigate the strains of travel on their cancer-stricken son, Matt. The family soon becomes haunted by violent and traumatic events from supernatural forces occupying the house. Promotional material for the film claimed that it was based on true events experienced by the Snedeker family of Southington, Connecticut, in 1986. Ed and Lorraine Warren claimed that the Snedeker house was a former funeral home where morticians regularly practiced necromancy, and that there were powerful, supernatural forces at work that were cured by an exorcism. The film was moderately successful, grossing about $78.8 million at the box office. It received generally unfavorable reviews, according to Metacritic. In 2010, Gold Circle Films announced the production of a sequel, The Haunting in Connecticut 2, Ghosts of Georgia, released 2013. They noted, however, that the film wouldn't be a direct sequel to The Haunting in Connecticut and would instead be a self-contained film with unique characters. Edward Warren Miney September 7, 1926 to August 23, 2006 and Lorraine Rita Warren née Moran, January 31, 1927 to April 18, 2019 were American paranormal investigators and authors associated with prominent cases of alleged hauntings. Edward was a self-taught and self-professed demonologist, author, and lecturer. Lorraine professed to be clairvoyant and a light trance medium who worked closely with her husband. The Devil in Connecticut by Gerald Brittle was republished as a movie tie-in for the release of The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, based on the Warrens' real-life Connecticut case. In 1952, the Warrens founded the New England Society for Psychic Research, NESPR, the oldest ghost hunting group in New England. They authored many books about the paranormal and about their private investigations into various reports of paranormal activity. They claimed to have investigated well over 10,000 cases during their career. The Warrens were among the first investigators in the Amityville haunting. The Demonologist, The Extraordinary Career of Ed and Lorraine Warren by Gerald Brittle was released as an ebook for the opening of The Conjuring based on the Warrens' life story. Stories of ghost hauntings popularized by the Warrens have been adapted as or have indirectly inspired dozens of films, television series, and documentaries, including several films in the Amityville horror series and the films in the Conjuring universe. Films that are partly based on their story are the films from the Amityville horror series, including the Amityville Horror 1979 and the Amityville Horror 2005. In 1991, a 2-hour made-for-TV film based on the Smurl haunting, titled The Haunted, was released by 20th Century Fox. In addition to the investigations, Lorraine ran the Warrens Occult Museum, which closed to the public in 2019 in the back of her house in Monroe, Connecticut. The museum displays many claimed haunted objects and artifacts from around the world. Many of the artifacts from their most famous investigations were featured. The museum closed due to zoning issues, and concerns around the house being a residential property that was being used for non-residential purposes. The museum is still available to a select few individuals. 31. Cold Fish 2010. Cold Fish Tsumatai Nategio is a 2010 Japanese film directed by Shaun Sono. Cold Fish premiered at the 67th Venice International Film Festival on September 7, 2010 and received the Best Screenplay Award in the Fantastic Features section at Fantastic Fest 2010. The film was released as part of the Bloody Disgusting Selects line. It was also shown at film festivals in Busan and at the Toronto International Film Festival, where it received its North American premiere. It was released in Japan on January 29, 2011. The film is loosely based on the exploits of two Tokyo serial killers, Seikain Gen and Hiroko Kazama, a husband and wife duo who owned a pet shop and murdered at least 4 people. Gen Seikain Gen, January 2, 1942 to March 27, 2017 was a Japanese dog breeder and serial killer who, together with his common-law wife Hiroko Kazama, murdered at least 4 clients in Kumagaya, Saitama Prefecture. Between April to August 1993, both were sentenced to death for their crimes, but Seikain died on death row prior to execution. According to accomplice Eiko Yamazaki, Seikain followed a set of 5 rules which he called his murder philosophy. Kill those who are not good for the world. Do not kill for insurance purposes, as you will get caught. Kill the greedy. It is important not to shed blood. The most important thing is to make the body disappear. Yamazaki further claimed that Seikain often bragged in private about committing the perfect crime, that he would never get caught and, if there was an Olympic event for killing, he would get the gold medal. Despite his enthusiastic and boastful attitude, Seikain was often described as small-minded and nervous, which was reflected with his obsession to constantly get rid of any incriminating evidence. Yamazaki said that while he was always frightened, Seikain was confident that he would never be caught. After their convictions, both Seikain and Kazawa were sent to await execution at the Tokyo detention house. In November 2016, Seikain fell ill and had to be rushed for treatment in the prison hospital. He died of multiple organ failure on the morning of March 27, 2017, aged 75. The Africa Kennel closed after the case broke. The buildings which housed the business have not been demolished, however, and remain standing in Kumagaya. After his release, Yamazaki appeared on a 2001 episode of the TV program Off Record. Shortly after the discovery of an amulet thought to be Kawasaki's, depicting a Daikokuten, Kazama, who remains on death row, continues to assert her innocence, a claim supported by Yamazaki, who in turn says that Seikain had coerced them both into committing the crimes. 32. FreewayKiller 2010. It is a 2010 crime horror thriller film directed by John Merlowski, and written by David Burke. A direct-to-video release, it is based on the crimes of William Bonin, an American serial killer who raped, tortured, and murdered at least 21 men and boys in Southern California in 1979 and 1980. FreewayKiller was released on DVD and Blu-ray by Image Entertainment on February 16, 2010. The film's special features include an audio commentary with director John Merlowski and writer David Burke, and a making-of featurette titled FreewayKiller, Capture. William George Bonin, January 8, 1947 to February 23, 1996, also called the Freeway Killer and the Freeway Strangler, was an American serial killer and sex offender who raped, tortured, and murdered young men and boys between November 1968 and June 1980 in Southern California. He was convicted of 14 murders, but he confessed to 21 and is suspected of even more. His first known murder victim was killed in May 1979. Bonin generally operated by luring his victims into his van under the pretense of having consensual sex. He became known as the Freeway Killer because most of his victims' bodies were discovered beside freeways. On many occasions, he was helped by one of his 4 known accomplices. One of them, Vernon Butts, was listed in court as an accomplice for 12 murders. He committed suicide before his trial in 1982. Bonin's 2 trials took place in Los Angeles County and Orange County, where he operated. Described by the prosecutor at his first trial as the most arch-evil person who ever existed, he spent 14 years on death row before his execution by lethal injection at San Quentin State Prison in 1996. He was the first prisoner in California to die by this method. 33. The Afflicted 2011. The Afflicted, also known as Another American Crime, is a 2011 American horror thriller film written and directed by Jason Stoddard. A limited theatrical release, it is based on the crimes of Teresa Knorr, an American woman who killed her husband in 1964 and torture-murdered 2 of her children during the 1980s. It stars Leslie Easterbrook as Maggie, a mentally disturbed mother of 4 who begins abusing her children based on her own twisted interpretations of the Bible. Kane Hodder co-stars as Maggie's husband Hank. Unlike the real case, the movie ends with the youngest daughter killing her mother and one of her brothers before committing suicide. On its opening weekend, the film grossed $90,272 and by November 11, 2011 had grossed $212,940. It was released on DVD on April 3, 2012 by Midnight Releasing. Teresa Jimmy Francine Norino as Teresa Nor, born March 14, 1946, is an American woman convicted of torturing and murdering 2 of her 6 children while using the others to facilitate and cover up her crimes. She was acquitted of murdering her first husband and was also considered a suspect in the unsolved murder of her sister. She is currently serving 2 consecutive life sentences at the California Institution for Women in Chino, California. Following Teresa Nor's arrest, police decided to reopen the murder case of her older sister, Rosemary Norris, who was found strangled to death at the end of a dead-end road in Placer County in 1983 after she went grocery shopping in Sacramento. Police later determined that Nor was not involved in Norris' death. Her murder remains unsolved. The murders were profiled on the A&E series Cold Case Files, featuring an exclusive interview with Terry Nor Walker. The case was also profiled on the series Most Evil, Wicked Attraction, Evil Lives Here, and Deadly Women. 34. Ragini MMS 2011. It is a 2011 Indian found footage horror film directed by Pawan Kripalani. It was released on May 13, 2011, Friday the 13th. The film is inspired by the 2007 American supernatural horror film Paranormal Activity and is partly based on the real story of a girl from Delhi named Deepika. The whole film is shot as a homemade movie. The spirit hangs Ragini to a wall for many days. The film ends in a way that is left for interpretation. In the end, a man finds Ragini unconscious and she had to undergo psychiatric treatment for 10 months. The story is open-ended and acts as a warning for naive girls to be extra cautious when dealing with shady people. The film was originally titled Ragini MMS, but a numerologist advised Ekta Kapoor to change it to Ragini MMS. The film took only 25 days to shoot. A total of 6 cameras were used to shoot the film, including a Canon 7D, an Arri Alexa, and a Handycam. The size of the total footage shot was around 2.5 terabytes. The movie was released on VCD and DVD. The satellite distribution rights were given to Hindi General Entertainment Channel Sahara 1. The film had a midnight premiere on May 13, 2011 in Pune. The film opened to a very good response in its first week, grossing 77.5 million Indian rupees. It was steady during its second week and grossed 99.4 million Indian rupees at the end of its second week. The film recovered its cost within 2 days of release. Ragini MMS is inspired by what happened to me Deepika one night when I went out with my boyfriend. I was 19 then, revealed the girl. A sequel to the movie Ragini MMS 2 was made and released on March 21, 2014. Continuing the story, the sequel focused on a film crew who went back to the haunted house to shoot a film on the infamous Ragini MMS scandal. It was directed by Bhusan Patel. 35. The Rite 2011. It is a 2011 supernatural horror film directed by Michael Hafstrom. It is loosely based on Matt Baglio's book The Rite, The Making of a Modern Exorcist, which itself is based on actual events as witnessed and recounted by American then exorcist-in-training Father Gary Thomas and his experiences of being sent to Rome to be trained and work daily with veteran clergy of the practice. It was released on January 28, 2011. The Rite grossed $33 million in the United States and Canada, and $63.5 million in other territories for a worldwide total of $96.6 million. The film made $14.8 million from 2,985 theaters in its opening weekend, beating fellow newcomer The Mechanic and topping the box office. It fell 62% to $5.6 million in its second weekend, finishing 6th, and made $3.3 million in its third weekend, dropping to 11th. While Baglio was still researching his book, producers Trip Vinson and Beau Flynn, who had already produced The Exorcism of Emily Rose, learned about Baglio's book proposal and decided to purchase the movie rights. The producers contacted Michael Petroni, who was one of the writers for The Chronicles of Narnia, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, to write the screenplay. Petroni, a practicing Catholic, coordinated the development of his screenplay with Baglio, who was now writing the book at about the same time. Synopsis: the book traces Father Gary's life prior to and subsequent to their acquaintance in 2005, which involved Baglio observing over 20 exorcisms performed by Father Gary. Baglio indicates that the experience in writing the book was just a very spiritual process, and in a lot of ways, it helped me reconnect to the church and understand the value of faith. This isn't something that is silly in prayer, it's very important. Father Gary Thomas was working as a parish priest in California when he was asked by his bishop to travel to Rome for training in the rite of exorcism. Though initially surprised, and slightly reluctant, he accepted this call, and enrolled in a new exorcism course at a Vatican-affiliated university, which taught him, among other things, how to distinguish between a genuine possession and mental illness. Eventually he would go on to participate in more than 80 exorcisms as an apprentice to a veteran Italian exorcist. His experiences profoundly changed the way he viewed the spiritual world, and as he moved from rational skeptic to practicing exorcist he came to understand the battle between good and evil in a whole new light. Journalist Matt Baglio had full access to Father Gary over the course of his training, and much of what he learned defies explanation. 36. The Snowtown Murders 2011. Snowtown, also known as the Snowtown Murders, is a 2011 Australian biographical crime drama directed by Justin Kurzel in his directorial debut and written by Sean Grant based on the true story of the Snowtown Murders. Snowtown is Kurzel's first feature-length film as director. His short film Bodom was shown at the 2005 Cannes Film Festival. Snowtown premiered at the 2011 Adelaide Film Festival and won the festival's Audience Award, and was selected as one of 7 films from around the world that were shown at Critics' Week competitions that ran in parallel with the 2011 Cannes Film Festival. At Cannes, the film was awarded with a special mention. The film grossed $8,452 in the US, $133 for $35 in Australia and $207,500 in France and the UK. The Snowtown Murders, also known as the Bodies in Barrels Murders, were a series of murders committed by John Justin Bunting, Robert Joe Wagner, and James Spiridon Vlasakis between August 1992 and May 1999, in and around Adelaide, South Australia. A fourth person, Mark Hayden, was convicted of helping to dispose of the bodies. The trial was one of the longest and most publicised in Australian legal history. Most of the bodies were found in barrels in an abandoned bank vault in Snowtown, South Australia, hence the names given in the press for the murders. Only one of the victims was killed in Snowtown itself, which is approximately 140 kilometers 87 miles north of Adelaide, and neither the 12 victims nor the 3 perpetrators were from the town. Although the motivation for the murders is unclear, the killers were led by Bunting to believe that the victims were pedophiles, homosexuals, or weak. In the case of some victims, the murders were preceded by torture and efforts were made to appropriate victims' identities, social security payments and bank accounts. Although initially the notoriety of the murders led to a short-term economic boost from tourists visiting Snowtown, it created a stigma, with authorities considering a change of the town's name and identity. The case has been chronicled in numerous books as well as a film adaptation released in 2011 to critical acclaim. In February 2024 Mark Hayden was granted parole, with authorities citing his excellent behavior in prison. He was released in April and is residing at the Adelaide Pre-Release Centre in Northfield as part of the conditions for his parole. John Justin Bunting, born September 4, 1966 in Inala, Queensland, was found to be the leader of the perpetrators. When he was 8 years old, Bunting was beaten and sexually assaulted by a friend's older brother. He is reported to have enjoyed weaponry, photography and anatomy, and grew to develop a strong hatred of pedophiles and homosexuals. At age 22 Bunting worked at an abattoir and reportedly bragged about slaughtering the animals, saying that's what he enjoyed the most. Robert Joe Wagner, born November 28, 1971 in Parramatta, New South Wales, was befriended by Bunting in 1991. Bunting encouraged Wagner to assist in the various murders. James Jamie Spiridon Vlasakis, born December 24, 1979, along with his mother and half-brother, lived with Bunting and was gradually drawn into helping with the murders. Vlasakis, 23, helped torture and kill his own half-brother, Troy Yudd, and his stepbrother David Johnson. He confessed in 2001 to 4 murders, including Johnson's, and became a key witness for the Crown. The detail he provided, supported by other evidence, helped convict Bunting and Wagner. Vlasakis was sentenced in 2002 to a minimum of 26 years and was held in isolation in an unidentified South Australia prison. Mark Ray Hayden, born December 4, 1958, an associate of Bunting, was initially the subject of suppression orders or statutory provisions prohibiting publication and could not therefore be identified as anything other than an alleged perpetrator. In January 1999 he reportedly rented the abandoned State Bank building at Snowtown. 37. The Apparition 2012. The Apparition is a 2012 supernatural horror film written and directed by Todd Lincoln. The plot follows 3 college students who, after the death of their friend, must battle a supernatural force they summon themselves. The film was loosely inspired by the Philip experiment conducted in 1972. The film was universally panned by both film's critics and audiences, with chief complaints being the complete lack of scares, poor script, borrowing from other better horror films, and for spoiling the ending in the theatrical trailer. The film was also a box office bomb, and was cited by critics as one of the worst films of 2012. The film was released on Blu-ray and DVD on November 27, 2012. The film opened at number 12 in its opening weekend at the box office, with a gross of $2.84 million. According to Box Office Mojo, with the unusually low theater count and a practically non-existent marketing effort, it's clear Warner Brothers was trying to bury this movie, and they appear to have succeeded. It grossed $4.9 million domestically and $6.4 million worldwide. 38. The Quiet Ones 2014. The Quiet Ones is a 2014 British supernatural horror film directed by John Pogue, loosely based on the Philip Experiment, a 1972 parapsychology experiment conducted in Toronto. It stars Jared Harris as a university professor attempting to prove poltergeists are manifestations of the human psyche and not supernatural beings. The film was released on April 10, 2014 in the United Kingdom and April 25, 2014 in the United States. Lionsgate Films acquired the rights to distribute the film in the United Kingdom and United States. It released the film on April 11, 2014 in the UK and April 25 in the US. The film grossed $3,880,053 in its opening weekend. The film grossed $8,509,867 in the US and $9,325,000 internationally. The worldwide total is $17,834,867. The Philip Experiment was a 1972 parapsychology experiment conducted in Toronto, Ontario to determine whether subjects can communicate with fictionalized ghosts through expectations of human will. The experiment was conducted by a Toronto Parapsychological Research Society led by mathematical geneticist Dr. A.R. George Owen and overseen by psychologist Dr. Joel Whitten. The test group consisted of Owen's wife Iris Owen, former chairperson of Mensa in Canada Margaret Sparrow, industrial designer Andy H., his wife Lauren, heating engineer Al Peacock, accountant Bernice M., bookkeeper Dorothy O'Donnell, and sociology student Sydney K. Their goals were to create a fictional character through a purposeful methodology and then attempt to communicate with it through seance. The character created and agreed upon was named Philip Aylesford, referred to as Philip during the test. His fictional history partially coincided with actual events and places, but with multiple contradictions and errors. He was born in 1624 in England, had an early military career and was knighted by the age of 16. He was involved in the English Civil War and became personal friends with Charles II, working for him as a spy. Philip was unhappily married to a woman named Dorothea and later fell in love with a Romani girl who was accused of witchcraft and burned at the stake. In despair, Philip committed suicide in 1654 at the age of 30. The group was seated around a table with initial seances yielding no contact, no communication, and no phenomenon. Owen changed test conditions by dimming lights and changing the environment to mimic that of a more traditional seance. Participants began feeling a presence, table vibrations, breezes, unexplained echoes, and rapping sounds which matched responses to questions about Philip's life. At one point the table tilted on a single leg, and at other times moved across the room without human contact. Although audio, video, and witness accounts document the paranormal phenomena, Philip never appeared to the participants. 39. House on the Hill 2012. It is a 2012 American horror film directed by Jeffrey Frenson and based on the real-life killing spree of serial killers Leonard Lake and Charles Ng. The film had its world premiere on May 11, 2012 at the Monaco Charity Film Festival and was released to DVD in the United Kingdom and United States in 2015. In the United Kingdom, 7 minutes and 12 seconds were cut from the film by the British Board of Film Classification in order to obtain an 18 rating. Leonard Thomas Lake, October 29, 1945 to June 6, 1985, also known as Leonard Hill and a variety of other aliases, was an American serial killer. During the mid-1980s he and his accomplice, British Hong Kong-born Charles Ng, raped, tortured and murdered an estimated 11 to 25 victims at a remote cabin near Wilseyville, California in the Sierra Nevada foothills located 150 miles east of San Francisco. After his 1985 arrest on unrelated charges, Lake swallowed cyanide pills that he had sewn into his clothing and died 4 days later. Human remains, videotapes, and journals found at Lake's cabin later confirmed Ng's involvement, and were used to convict Ng on 11 counts of capital murder. Charles Chi Tat Ng, born December 24, 1960, is a convicted Hong Kong-born serial killer who committed numerous crimes in the United States. He is believed to have raped, tortured, and murdered between 11 and 25 victims with his accomplice Leonard Lake at Lake's cabin in Calaveras County, California, 60 miles 96 kilometers from Sacramento, between 1983 and 1985. After his arrest and imprisonment in Canada on robbery and weapons charges, followed by a lengthy dispute between Canada and the U.S., Ng was extradited to California, tried, and convicted of 11 murders. He is currently on death row at California Medical Facility. In February 1999 Ng was convicted of 11 of the 12 homicides, 6 men, 3 women, and 2 male infants. Jurors found him not guilty on the 12th charge, the murder of Paul Costner, even though Lake and Ng had driven Costner's car for 7 months since he went missing in November 1984, and Costner's California driver's license had been found at the Wilseyville property. Ng was sentenced to death and the presiding judge rejected a motion to reduce the sentence to life imprisonment. Mr. Ng was not under any duress, he said, nor does the evidence support that he was under the domination of Leonard Lake. Ng's prosecution cost the state of California approximately $20 million, at the time the most expensive trial in the state's history. On July 28, 2022, the California Supreme Court upheld Ng's death sentence and conviction. Ng still has other federal appeals in spite of a moratorium on the death penalty by Governor Gavin Newsom. As of 2023, Ng remains on death row at California Medical Facility. No executions have taken place in California since 2006. 40. The Sacrament 2013. It is a 2013 American found footage horror film written and directed by T. West. A. J. Bowen and Joe Swanberg play vice journalists who document their co-workers Ken Tucker oddly attempts to locate his sister Amy Seimetz after she joins a reclusive religious commune. The film's plot is inspired by the real-life events of the Jonestown Massacre of 1978. The Sacrament premiered at the Venice Film Festival in September 2013. It was released on video on demand on May 1, 2014 and had a limited theatrical release on June 6, 2014. The People's Temple Agricultural Project, better known by its informal name, Jonestown, was a remote settlement in Guyana established by the People's Temple, an American cult under the leadership of Jim Jones. Jonestown became internationally infamous when, on November 18, 1978, a total of 918 people died at the settlement, at the nearby airstrip in Port Kaituma, and at a temple-run building in Georgetown, Guyana's capital city. The name of the settlement became synonymous with the incidents at those locations. In total, 909 individuals died in Jonestown itself, all but 2 from apparent cyanide poisoning, a significant number of whom were injected against their will, in an event termed revolutionary suicide by Jones and some People's Temple members on an audio tape of the event, and in prior recorded discussions. The poisonings in Jonestown followed the murder of 5 others by Temple members at Port Kaituma, including U.S. Congressman Leo Ryan, an act that Jones ordered. 4 other Temple members committed murder-suicide in Georgetown at Jones' command. Terms used to describe the deaths in Jonestown and Georgetown have evolved over time. Many contemporary media accounts after the events called the deaths a mass suicide. In contrast, later sources refer to the deaths with terms such as mass murder-suicide, a massacre, or simply mass murder. 70 or more individuals at Jonestown were injected with poison, and a third of the victims were minors. Guards armed with firearms and crossbows had been ordered to shoot anyone who attempted to flee the settlement as Jones lobbied for suicide. 41. Bodom, internationally Lake Bodom, 2016. It is a 2016 Finnish slasher film directed by Taneli Mustonen. It is inspired by, but not based upon the 1960 Lake Bodom murders, telling the story of a group of Finnish friends who decide to go camping by Lake Bodom to reconstruct the 1960 murders, but something goes wrong. Bodom was invited to Cannes for an event organized by the Marquee du Film, for which the films were chosen by a joint jury of the organizers of the event, the Cannes Film Market and the Canadian Frontieres Film Event. Bodom received 3 Jussi Awards nominations for Best Picture Female Lead Mimosa Willamo and Sound Design. It won the Sound Design Award. Mimosa Willamo also won the Best Actress Award at Screamfest in 2016. The Lake Bodom murders is one of the most infamous unsolved homicide cases in Finnish criminal history. Sometime between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. Eastern European Time on June 5, 1960 at Lake Bodom in Espoo, Uusimaa, Mila Björklund and Anja Maki, both 15 and Seppo Boiman 18, were killed by stabbing and blunt force trauma to their heads while sleeping inside a tent. The 4th youth Nils Gustafsson, then aged 18, was found outside the tent with broken facial bones and stab wounds. Despite extensive investigations, the perpetrator was never identified and various theories on the killer's identity have been presented over the years. Gustafsson was a bus driver and lived a normal life until 2004, almost 44 years after the event, when he was arrested by the police on the suspicion that he was the murderer. In early 2005, the Finnish National Bureau of Investigation declared the case reopened, based on some new analysis of bloodstains found at the scene. These analyses required DNA testing, a technique not available at the time of the murders. According to police theory, Gustafsson had an alleged outburst of jealousy involving one of the victims, Ermelie Björklund, his girlfriend. Ermelie was stabbed 15 times that night, while the 2 other teenagers were killed less savagely. Gustafsson's own injuries were also severe. The trial started on August 4, 2005. The prosecution called for a life sentence against Gustafsson on 3 counts of murder. They claimed that the re-examination of the old evidence using modern techniques pointed directly to him. The defense argued that the killings were the work of one or more outsiders and that Gustafsson suffered injuries similar to those sustained by the other victims, and therefore would have been incapable of killing 3 people. Gustafsson had allegedly admitted to a police officer, following his arrest, that he had committed the murders, saying, "What's done is done, I'll get 15 years. However, the court dismissed this and charges of false perjury were raised. On October 7, 2005, Gustafsson was acquitted of all charges. He was awarded €44,900, $58,229 and 31 cents, in damages for his time in prison and the mental anguish he suffered in being accused. 42. The Exorcism of Anna Ecklund 2016. It is a 2016 British horror film written and directed by Andrew Jones. The plot is based on the alleged true story of Anna Ecklund. The Exorcism of Anna Ecklund was released in the United Kingdom on March 7, 2016. The film was later released in the United States on April 5 of the same year. Anna Ecklund was a pseudonym for Emma Schmidt. March 23, 1882 to July 23, 1941, an American woman whose alleged demonic possession and exorcism occurred over several decades, culminating in an extensive exorcism that lasted from August 18 to December 23, 1928, in Ecklund, Iowa. Ecklund was said to have exhibited symptoms akin to possession beginning at age 14, and was 46 years old during her final exorcism by Father Theophilus Reisinger, a Roman Catholic priest. Ecklund's case is considered by theology and paranormal scholars to be one of the most abundantly documented cases of possession in the 20th century, including a profile in a 1936 issue of Time magazine. The extensive exorcism resulted in deterioration of Ecklund's body, as she refused to consume food, also vomiting foul debris and what appeared to be tobacco leaves. Her head, lips, and face reportedly swelled, and she also was able to speak in multiple languages unknown to her. The exorcism was reportedly so grueling, and Ecklund's behavior so violent, that several nuns in the Franciscan order asked to be relocated to a different convent. Ecklund was believed to be possessed by Judas Iscariot, as well as Jacob, her own father, who had cursed her with the help of his lover, her Aunt Nina, for refusing his incestuous sexual advances during her adolescence. During the exorcisms, Ecklund also spoke in a high falsetto voice, which Reisinger interpreted as the voice of her Aunt Mina. Anna Ecklund Emma Schmidt died on July 23, 1941 at age 59, or if Hulda Emma Schmidt on June 23, 1964 at age 81. 43 Wolves at the Door 2016. It is a 2016 American horror film directed by John R. Leonetti. The film is loosely based on the murder of Sharon Tate, the pregnant wife of Roman Polanski and her friends in 1969 by members of the Manson family, and, though not considered an installment in the franchise, takes place within the Conjuring universe. The cast features Katie Cassidy, Elizabeth Henstridge, Adam Campbell and Miles Fisher as four friends who are stalked and murdered by a group of intruders at a farewell party, with Eric Ledeen reprising his role as Detective Clarkin from Leonetti's 2014 film Annabelle. The film, produced by New Line Cinema and the Safran Company and distributed by Warner Brothers Pictures, was first theatrically released in India on October 21, 2016, followed by Germany on March 2, 2017 and in the United Kingdom on March 17, 2017. 44. The Haunting of Sharon Tate 2019. It is a 2019 American horror thriller film written and directed by Daniel Farrens, and starring Hilary Duff, Jonathan Bennett, Lydia Hurst, Howell Sajda and Ryan Cargill. The film is a fictionalized account of the 1969 Tate murders, following actress Sharon Tate, Duff, as she suffers premonitions of her murder by the Manson family. It was released in the United States on April 5, 2019 by Saban Films. The film was panned by critics. Sharon Marie Tate Polanski née Tate, January 24, 1943 to August 9, 1969 was an American actress and model. During the 1960s she appeared in advertisements and small television roles before appearing in films as well as working as a model. After receiving positive reviews for her comedic and dramatic acting performances, Tate was hailed as one of Hollywood's most promising newcomers, being compared favorably with the late Marilyn Monroe. She made her film debut in 1961 as an extra in Barabbas with Anthony Quinn. She next appeared in the British mystery horror film Eye of the Devil 1966. Her first major role was as Jennifer North in the 1967 American drama film Valley of the Dolls, which earned her a Golden Globe Award nomination. The role would help her to become a rising sex symbol of Hollywood, appearing in a Playboy photo shoot where she would be shot by filmmaker Roman Polanski, Tate's future husband. That year, she also performed in the comedy horror film The Fearless Vampire Killers, directed by Roman Polanski. Tate's last completed film 12+1 was released posthumously in 1969. On August 9, 1969, Tate and four others were murdered by members of the Manson family, a cult, in the home she shared with Polanski while he was away. She was 8.5 months pregnant. Tate and Polanski at their wedding in 1968. The Tate family burial plot located at Holy Cross Cemetery, Culver City, California, in which Tate, her unborn son Paul, mother Doris, and sister Patty are buried. The 5 victims were stabbed a total of 102 times. One of them, Wojtek Frykowski, was struck on the head 13 times, shot twice and stabbed 51 times. The beautiful Sharon Tate, 27, was stabbed 16 times. Rope burns on her left cheek indicated she had been suspended by a nylon line thrown over a living room beam and tied to her neck. Pig was written on the front door in Miss Tate's blood. Next night, Bugliosi declared it was Mr. and Mrs. LaBianca who were savagely butchered to death as a result of Charles Manson's homicidal murderers. Leno LaBianca, 44, was found clad in pajamas on the living room floor of his Los Feliz district home. His hands were bound, a pillowcase covered his head, and he had been stabbed 26 times, or had been scratched on his abdomen. A carving fork protruded from his stomach and a 5-inch knife was embedded in his throat. The negligee-clad body of his 38-year-old wife, Rosemary, was found in a bedroom. Her head was hooded with a pillowcase and her back had been cut to shreds. She had been stabbed 41 times. Death to pigs and Rise had been written in blood on the living room walls. Helter Skelter was smeared across the refrigerator door. 45. Aurora 2018. Aurora is a 2018 Philippine horror thriller film written and directed by Yam Laranas. It serves as an official entry to the 2018 Metro Manila Film Festival and marks Curtis' third and last film of 2018 following her box office hits Sid and Aya, Not a Love Story, and Buy Bust. The film is inspired by the 1987 disaster of MV Dona Paz's collision with MT Vector. MV Dona Paz was a Japanese-built and Philippine-registered passenger ferry that sank after it collided with the oil tanker Vector on December 20, 1987. Built by Onamichi Zosen of Hiroshima, Japan, the ship was launched on April 25, 1963 as the Himuri Maru with a passenger capacity of 608. In October 1975 the Himuri Maru was bought by Sulpicio Lines and renamed the Don Sulpicio. After a fire aboard in June 1979, the ship was refurbished and renamed Dona Paz. Traveling from Leyte Island to the Philippine capital, Manila, the vessel was seriously overcrowded, with at least 2,000 passengers not listed on the manifest. It has also been claimed that the ship did not have a radio and that the life jackets were locked away. However, official blame was directed at the tanker Vector, which collided with the Dona Paz and was found to be unseaworthy and to be operating without a license, a lookout, or a qualified master. With an estimated death toll of 4,385 people and only 26 survivors, it remains the deadliest peacetime maritime disaster in history. 46. Lords of Chaos 2018. It is a 2018 biographical horror thriller film directed by Jonas Ecklund and written by Dennis Magnuson and Ecklund. Adapted from the 1998 book of the same name, the film is a historical fiction account of the early 1990s Norwegian black metal scene told from the perspective of Mayhem co-founder Euronymous. It stars Rory Culkin as Euronymous, Emery Cohen as Vard Vikernes, Jack Kilmer as Dead, and Sky Ferreira as Anne Mart. The film premiered at the Sundance Film Festival on January 23, 2018. It was released in the United States on February 8, 2019 by Gunpowder and Sky, in the United Kingdom on March 29, 2019 by Arrow Films, and in Sweden on April 5, 2019 by Nordisk Film. It received positive reviews from critics, but was met with polarizing reception from audiences within the metal community. Lords of Chaos, The Bloody Rise of the Satanic Metal Underground is a book by Michael J. Moynihan and Didrik Soderlund. It is an account of the early Norwegian black metal scene, with a focus on the string of church burnings and murders that occurred in the country around 1993. The book has been the subject of controversy over the alleged political leanings of author Michael Moynihan, though he denies these allegations. The book focuses on the scene surrounding the extreme heavy metal subgenre black metal in Norway between 1990 and 1993. The first few chapters give an outline of the progression of heavy metal from bands such as Black Sabbath, Coven and Black Widow to proto-black metal bands such as Bathory, Merciful Fate, Celtic Frost, Sarcophago, Hellhammer and Venom, and finally to the early Norwegian black metal band Mayhem. The book then details the April 1991 suicide of Mayhem frontman Per Yngve Dead Olin and the formation of a radicalized inner circle around Oystein Euronymous Arsef, based out of his small black metal retail shop Helvete, Norwegian for Hell, in Oslo, Norway. In 1992 and 1993, members of the group became connected with a series of crimes, starting with the arson of the Fantoft Stave Church on June 6, 1992, although the book mentions that there had previously been a small, ineffectual fire at Storvik Church. Church arsons continued but with a steady decline up until 1995. The cover of Lords of Chaos shows a 19th-century Swedish church in flames. The book also mentions other cases of satanic murderers, such as that of Sandro Bayer by members of the German National Socialist black metal band Absurd and Caleb Fairley in the USA. It also devotes several pages to the case of a self-styled teen militia named Lords of Chaos that perpetrated murder and arson in Fort Myers, Florida in April 1996, but does not mention why the title Lords of Chaos was chosen for the book. 47. Winchester 2018. Winchester, also known as Winchester, The House That Ghosts Built, is a 2018 supernatural horror film directed by Michael and Peter Spyrig. The film stars Helen Mirren as heiress Sarah Winchester, with Jason Clarke and Sarah Snook, and follows Winchester as she is haunted by spirits inside her San Jose mansion in 1906. An American-Australian co-production, the film was released in the United States on February 2, 2018, and in Australia on February 22, 2018. The film received negative reviews from critics, who called it dull and pointless, but was a box office success, grossed $25.1 million in the United States and Canada, and $20.9 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $46 million, against a production budget of $3.5 million. At the 39th Golden Raspberry Awards, the film was nominated in 4 categories, including Worst Picture and Worst Actress for Mirren, but did not win any of them. The Winchester Mystery House is a mansion in San Jose, California, that was once the personal residence of Sarah Winchester, the widow of firearms magnate William Wirt Winchester. The house became a tourist attraction 9 months after Winchester's death in 1922. The Victorian and Gothic-style mansion is renowned for its size and its architectural curiosities, and for the numerous myths and legends surrounding the structure and its former owner. The house became a tourist attraction 9 months after Winchester's death in 1922. The house was in disrepair and considered to be of no monetary value. A group of investors purchased the property, subsequently leasing the house to John and Mamie Brown, who turned it into an attraction. They later purchased the house in 1931. There were many room additions and deletions made to the home after Winchester's death. Visitors and tour guides claimed to have experienced cold spots, footsteps, cooking smells, odd sounds, whispering, doors and windows slamming, and feelings of being watched. Investigator Joe Nickel explains that they could be the result of confirmation bias and suggestibility due to publicity and rumors that the house is the most haunted house in the United States or even the world, or that over 1,000 ghosts reside in the home. According to Nickel, there is no evidence that the house is haunted, and that alleged whispering sounds can be imagined or due to wind. Additionally, it is common for large, rambling, and drafty old houses to have temperature variations, and the house's settling and exterior temperature changes can explain odd noises. The CoEdKiller 2018. It is a 2018 American coming-of-age thriller film directed by Duncan Skiles in his directorial debut and written by Christopher Ford. It stars Dylan McDermott, Charlie Plummer, Samantha Mathis, and Madison Beatty. The film was mostly inspired by the story of real-life serial killer Dennis Rader, also known as the BTK Killer. It premiered at LA Film Festival on September 22, 2018, and it received a limited theatrical release on November 16, 2018, distributed by IFC Midnight. In a 2019 list of the 50 best serial killer movies of all time, Paste magazine ranked the CoEdKiller at number 48, writing, "This is a devilish movie that does beautifully what horror films are meant to, vex us with fear, through the most deceptively simple of means." Lauded horror author Stephen King wrote about the film, calling it an excellent small movie, unbearably suspenseful, and not for the faint of heart. Dennis Lynn Rader, born March 9, 1945, also known as BTK, an abbreviation he gave himself for bind, torture, kill, is an American serial killer who murdered at least 10 people in Wichita and Park City, Kansas between 1974 and 1991. Although Rader occasionally killed or attempted to kill men and children, he typically targeted women. His victims were often bound, sometimes with objects from their homes, and either suffocated with a plastic bag or manually strangled with a ligature. In addition, Rader stole keepsakes from his female victims, including underwear, licenses, and personal items. He often sent taunting letters to police and media outlets, describing the details of his crimes. In 2004, after a 13-year hiatus, Rader resumed sending letters, leading to his 2005 arrest and subsequent guilty plea. He is currently serving 10 consecutive life sentences at the El Dorado Correctional Facility. Stephen King has said his novella A Good Marriage, and the film based on it, were inspired by the BTK Killer. Novelist Thomas Harris has said that the character of Francis Dollarhide in his 1981 novel Red Dragon is partially based on the then unidentified BTK Killer. A character based on Rader, played by actor Sonny Valicenti, appears in the Netflix series Mindhunter. 49. Bhoot, Part 1, The Haunted Ship 2020, is a Indian Hindi-language horror thriller film written and directed by Bhanu Pratap Singh and jointly produced by Karan Johar, Hiroyash Johar, Apurva Mehta, and Shashank Gaitan. The film features Vicky Kaushal in lead role and is the first film of what was a planned horror film franchise. Movie's director and producer claimed that film is based on a true incident that took place in Mumbai. The famous MV Wisdom in 2011 and tells the story of an officer who has to move an abandoned but haunted ship lying static on Juhu Beach. Principal photography began in December 2018 and was wrapped in September 2019. Set for an initial release on November 15, 2019, the film was postponed and released theatrically in India on February 21, 2020. It eventually received negative reviews and was a commercial failure. When the 25-year-old container ship was found stranded on Juhu Beach, near Mumbai, on June 11, it generated more rumors than interest. Instead of factual information, what was reported in the media was more based on conjectures and hearsay, leaving the Indian public more confused than ever. Every person who went to see the ship came back with full of stories. Each one had a theory better than his neighbor. Every piece of information was enlarged, expanded and spread out. Gross tonnage (GT) of the ship was confused for light deadweight ton (LDT), and the bow thruster was confused for the propeller. The motor vessel Wisdom was built in 1985 as a cellular container ship having a profile capacity of 1,002 TEUs. A TEU is a unit that indicates a steel container of 20 feet and is referred to as 20-foot equivalent unit. It can effectively load only 660 TEUs of 14 tons each. It was originally built in 1985 as Hollandia, in yard number 403 at Rickmers Werft, Bremen, Germany, registered in Antigua and chartered to APL. Finally, what has actually happened? The vessel was under tow from Colombo to Ecklund, Gujarat, and was on its typical normal route bound for scrapping at one of the yards. During monsoon season, a tow line can break, and this has happened in the past. So there is nothing amiss in this accident. We should not read too much into it. But unfortunately, for every incident and accident, an FIR is filed. This is the sad part. 50. Aileen Wuornos, American Boogeywoman 2021, is a 2021 American horror thriller film written and directed by Daniel Farrens. It shows a fictionalized version of the early life of serial killer Aileen Wuornos, with some real facts from her biography. The film was released as video on demand on October 8, 2021 and on DVD on October 15, 2021. Aileen Carol Wuornos, born Pittman, February 29, 1956 to October 9, 2002, was an American serial killer. In 1989 to 1990, while engaging in street prostitution along highways in Florida, she shot dead and robbed 7 of her male clients. Wuornos claimed that her clients had either raped or attempted to rape her, and that the homicides of the men were committed in self-defense. Wuornos was sentenced to death for 6 of the murders. She was executed on October 9, 2002 by lethal injection after spending more than 10 years on Florida's death row. Wuornos murdered 7 men within a period of 12 months. All the men were motorists between the ages of 40 and 65. Her last words were, "Yes, I would just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back, like Independence Day, with Jesus." June 6, like the movie, big mothership and all, I'll be back, I'll be back. She died at 9:47 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. She was the 2nd woman in Florida and the 10th in the United States to be executed since the 1976 United States Supreme Court decision restoring capital punishment. According to some specialists, Wuornos' crimes have been related to her psychopathic personality and her psychotraumatic past. Assessed using the psychopathy checklist, Wuornos scored 32 of 40 with the cutoff score of 30 for determining psychopathy. Wuornos was also known to meet the relevant criteria for determining borderline personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder. The biographical drama film Monster 2003 stars Charlize Theron as Wuornos and Christina Ricci as Tyria Moore Selby Wall in the film. The film centers on Wuornos' series of murders and her relationship with her girlfriend Tyria Moore. Theron won the Academy Award for Best Actress for her performance in the film.